Story 1.
My cheating wife lived a double life with her affair partner until I found out and exposed them both. Cheaters often leave their search history unattended. Monkey branching, or moving from one relationship to another, is considered cheating. This happened to me about months ago, just before our wedding. She got cold feet, and we almost called off the wedding. She expressed uncertainty about marriage without providing a clear reason. We talked a lot, and I gave her space. She stayed with her parents for a few days. Days after a week or two of hesitation, we had a conversation, and she confirmed that she wanted to be together. We got married in the summer of 2021. A few months later, she started a new job and became interested in a guy she found funny. She shared many stories about him, and I started feeling uneasy. I met this guy once after work, and he gave off a bad vibe. A couple of weeks later, while I was working late, she was out with coworkers and stayed out longer than expected. We shared our locations on her phone. I got nervous when she didn't respond to my texts, so I checked her location, and she was at McDonald's for almost an hour. When she finally returned to my place, she sat outside for about half an hour. I took my dog out, and it turned out the guy drove her home. They were sitting in my driveway chatting. I approached them, and she got out of the car. He tried to shake my hand. When she came in, I told her that was totally unacceptable, and I didn't want them spending one-on-one time like that. She seemed remorseful, saying she overstepped a line and didn't mean anything by it. I believed her because, prior to that, I had no reason to suspect any infidelity. A week or two later, toward the end of April, she went on a weekend trip to Colorado with friends who had moved there. When she came back, she was distant. I tried talking to her, but she went to bed early. 3 days later, on my second-to-last day at a difficult job, we went out for drinks after my shift, and I invited her. She came dressed in sweatpants, looking sloppy, acting quiet, not her usual bubbly self, and frankly, a bit rude. At the end of the night, when we got home, I asked her what was wrong. It was like pulling teeth. She finally said she didn't want to be together. I asked why, and she didn't really know. She didn't think we were a good fit. I kept asking her many questions. Is she a lesbian? Is there another guy? She said she didn't know what she wanted in life and couldn't imagine having kids with me if she wasn't certain. I stayed up all night trying to talk to her. She just fell asleep. The next morning, she left. Her Google account was logged in on my computer, and I found searches like "ended my marriage for another man." She searched for their astrological sign compatibility and song lyrics about the guy on Google. In the past month, she came to get her stuff while I was at work, leaving only a Christmas mug that said joy. When we moved into our apartment, we found a sticky note on the wall that said, "Yikes." We kept it up because it was a dingy apartment and we thought it was funny. She thought it would be funny. Perhaps her affair partner found it amusing to leave the joy mug on my counter with the "Yikes" sticker. I texted her to ask what that was about, and she simply said she thought it would be funny. The divorce was quick and easy as it was uncontested due to our lack of children. She wasn't interested in keeping our dog, leaving me the apartment and most of my belongings. In that aspect, she showed mercy. During this process, I asked if she believed I wouldn't find out about her cheating. She denied cheating, and in response, I thanked her for leaving. I didn't know what kind of person she was, and I wouldn't want to be married to someone who behaves like she does, someone who disrespects marriages, frequents strip clubs, and abandons their spouse. This is my first time sharing my story here. Since August, we've had no contact, and honestly, I don't think she cares. I'm slowly reaching a point where I don't care either. It took me a long time to move past the shock. My New Year's resolution is to leave her in the past, stop dwelling on her, and focus entirely on myself. Easier said than done. Since then, I've lost 20 lbs, hit the gym several times a week, and seen muscle gains. I joined a Bible study and attend church weekly. I traveled to Colorado with my brother and have now booked a trip to Europe. I had 6 weddings to attend this year, including my sister's. These were challenging given what happened, but I attended all of them. My new job has been great. I've had many dates, but I haven't found anyone I feel compatible with yet. I'm scared I won't find that person. Part of me is relieved she left. I'm not sure I would have had the strength to leave without knowing she was pursuing something else. If she was disrespectful enough to seek another relationship, she wasn't worth my time or effort. Update: today is a significant day for all of us. Usually, I don't care much about New Year's, but after a tough year, we all deserve to feel excited about a new hope on the horizon. I hope that 2023 brings peace, healing, and happiness to everyone. My wish is that we all find strength within ourselves to move forward with curiosity and creativity, exploring new paths in our lives. On weekdays, let's practice perseverance and self-forgiveness. On strong days, let's embrace elation and joy. May we have the courage to venture into uncharted territories and the peace to confront our demons. Let's find the power to overcome them and spread love in every place and every face. I hope for authenticity, not only in those around us, but genuine authenticity to rediscover and showcase who we truly are. May 2023 be filled with adventure and growth. Let's climb out of this dreaded abyss and discover not only our true selves, but who we were meant to be. Leave the traitors in 2022. Those who are cowardly, inauthentic, and selfish can stay behind. Find gratitude for everything we have, even the lessons learned from betrayal. Lastly, leave behind the shackles in 2022. Delete remaining pictures and texts. Abandon the need for revenge, checking on people. Externalize closure, anger, and sadness. Let's try to let go, surrender to the present, and embrace our destiny. Release the sinking ships to swim freely. Courageously look forward, spread our wings, and soar. This is my prayer for all of us in 2023. Happy New Year to my friends here. We have a community reaction, 7 likes, shared wishes for brighter days in 2023 and beyond. After enduring deep despair and betrayal, we deserve the best, seeking joy and light in our lives. Cheaters just don't fit with joy and light. They belong in the past. Second story. I've been married for 16 and 1/12 years to my 21-year-old wife, and we've had our share of ups and downs. When I first met her, she was the nicest and kindest woman I'd ever encountered. Strangely enough, I told her she would be my wife just 2 minutes after meeting her. Our 2 kids mean the world to me. However, after our second child, she became distant, depressed, and changed. I assumed it was depression, but she refused to explore it and suggested couples counseling. During the recession, when money was tight, I was working 4 jobs and a side business just to make it another month. Affording counseling was challenging, especially when she wouldn't communicate. She'd have good and bad weeks, sometimes being great and other times mean and disrespectful. Eventually, when things stabilized, I urged her to go to counseling with me. Reluctantly, she agreed, but I don't think she enjoyed it. The counselor, however, echoed what I had been saying. I can't fix what I don't know. She requested more help around the house, which I provided. Since 2015, I've worked 3 jobs, managed household chores, and things improved for a while. Yet she became mean again, often snapping at our daughter. Concerned about the impact on our child, I told her I'd never divorce her, committed to making our marriage better for as long as it took. However, I think because my daughter is so much like me, she was taking her anger out on her, and I can't allow that. So if she wanted a divorce, that's what we'd do. The next day, she said she wanted to try and make it work. For a few years, things were good. She even went to a doctor and got prescribed antidepressants but insisted on the lowest dose. Fast forward to 2020, and she went right back to being mean and disrespectful. Worse, there was total disdain in her voice whenever she spoke to me and a look of disgust whenever I showed up somewhere. It hurt. Closeness was never a problem with us, and we both seemed to enjoy each other, but when she'd get in those moods, she'd withhold. Still, I remained faithful, even though, as a bartender, I had many offers. At one point, my sister assumed I had been cheating, because she knew my wife wasn't close for so long. I told her I'd never do that, so now we're here. Last month, after a wedding, we were at a hotel, and I was hoping to fool around when she told me flat out, "I don't want you. I think we should get divorced." We agreed to do it, but hold off until after the holidays for the kids. She fell asleep 10 minutes later. I laid in bed with tears pouring down my face for 3 hours. I thought it was going to be the most pain I'd ever felt. Then there's today. A week ago, she had to go to a party for my daughter's softball team. At midnight, she wasn't home, so I checked our Life 360 app and she was at an Applebee's. Weird, but I thought she met her friend for a drink after. Thing is, she was there till 1, but they closed at 12. I asked where she went, and she said some bar with the people from the party, never said Applebee's, which was strange. 2 days later, she said her boss told her she had to put a password on her phone because of work emails. Now I was suspicious. Today, her mom called and asked if I could help her husband move a rug, so I went to help. When I was done, I stood outside and looked on the Life 360 app to see if she had left work. She had, so I decided to try something. My wife has a bad habit of needing to talk on the phone when she drives, so I called her. She was short and said she had to go because she was talking to her mom who was standing right in front of me. Okay. I went home. When she got there, I asked how her mom was and if she had told her I had seen her today. She said she hadn't, and asked where I saw her. I said, "At her house when I called you." Her face dropped. She attempted to give some weak excuses, but eventually confessed that she had been seeing someone for a few months. So before we decided to get a divorce, I was completely shocked. 10 minutes later, she acted as if nothing had happened. I'm not sure whether it was to avoid tipping off the kids or simply because she didn't care that she hurt me, but I suspect the latter. I couldn't talk to anyone about it because we've kept our decision to divorce a secret so my kids didn't catch wind of anything. And we had to attend the Christmas village tonight, so we were out all night. My kids sensed that something was wrong with me, but they just thought I was in a bad mood. My son even said, "You sound hurt. I'm unsure about what I'm going to do." The idea of divorce was already incredibly stressful, and I unintentionally lost 20 lbs in the past month. I need to figure out how to go through this without losing my house. Over the last 15 years, I've been paying off her $110,000 in credit card debt, $15,000 in student loans, and a $44,000 car. Now, I might owe her at least $40,000 for the house. It's going to be painful, but I believe I can handle it. I was finally starting to mentally prepare for the divorce, and then this betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. In the last month, she's hurt me more than I ever thought possible. I don't even recognize the woman I married anymore. I don't know what to do. My daughter is going to be heartbroken when we tell her we're splitting up, but I'm unsure if I should tell her about this because I don't want her to hate her mom. I'm lost, confused, stressed beyond belief, and heartbroken. When I look at my wife, she seems like she couldn't care less. Update, still not finished as expected, considering it's only been a few months. A week after my post, I discovered the guy's name while she was sending a Facebook message on her computer. Evidently, that's their only way of communicating, most likely because he's married with 3 kids. He's also a doctor and wealthy. That one really hit hard for a guy working 3 jobs to make ends meet. On Christmas, I found out she had informed her entire family, along with my sister and my cousin's wife, that we were divorcing. Meanwhile, I hadn't told anyone yet, fearing it might get back to my kids before the holidays were over. Her mom wasn't happy, thinking she was making the biggest mistake of her life. The same went for my sister and her best friend. She didn't care. She also omitted the part about her cheating, of course. I couldn't talk to her mom at Christmas because she was already starting to cry, and I didn't want to alert my kids, so I arranged to talk to her a few days later. The next day, my wife and I had a conversation. I told her I didn't want her seeing the guy until everything was settled. It was disrespectful, and if she wanted a divorce as friends, she shouldn't treat a friend like that. She agreed. Then we discussed how to divide things. I think I did okay. No alimony, no child support, 50/50 custody. We both provide clothes for the kids, and everything else is split equally. I'm keeping the house, but I have to pay her $43,000 in equity. In the end, she walked away with about $40,000. She owes her dad $10,000, has an 800 credit score, and 0 debt, all thanks to me. When I finally spoke to her mom, I found out that when she learned we were going to talk, she came clean to her. Initially, she lied about cheating when her mom asked, then confessed. My mother-in-law was furious, really laid into her, and then cried to me that she was scared I was going to cut her out of my life, which I assured her would never happen. Fast forward to mid-January. Now I've lost 40 lbs. I hit the gym every day to relieve stress. Now we have to break the news to my kids. I told her I wouldn't lie to my kids, but I wasn't going to just expose her either. I said if they asked, I'd try to guide the conversation a different way. She said she felt the same way. The thing is, I knew my daughter wouldn't buy into it. She's like a 14-year-old clone of me. She can spot BS a mile away. And that's exactly what happened. Before we even said anything, my daughter asked if we were getting divorced. When we sat them down, my wife said yes, and my kids lost it. Lots of crying. I saw them crying, and I started crying. Then my wife made a big mistake. She said, "Listen, we both want this." That's when my daughter let her have it with everything she had. She yelled, "That's BS. My father would never want this." "You want this? Look at him, he's crying. I've never seen him cry in my life. This is you." Then she asked if my wife was cheating on me. My wife tried to change the subject, but she wasn't having it. She grilled her while screaming, "Tell me the truth," over and over until my wife confessed. After that, it was like I could see her brain working. She started pointing out every red flag and made my wife confess to it. In 3 minutes, she got more out of her than I did in a month. Later, I had a one-on-one talk with my kids. My 12-year-old son just needed reassurance that things would be okay and that we'd change as little as possible. He's dreading when everything finally concludes. My daughter shared that she was crying for me, not herself, because of how hurt I had to be. I comforted her and made her feel better. Then she asked me to make her a promise. Since I've never broken a promise to my kids, she requested me to promise that if, after all of this is over, my wife loses her new house and needs a place to stay for a while, I would let her stay here. Despite everything going on, she looked out for her mom. I couldn't refuse. When she talked to her mom, she asked her to promise to stop talking to the guy. However, she broke that promise after 2 weeks. Since then, she's been sneaking around and seeing him for short periods at places like Target. We had a major argument, and again, she agreed to stop seeing him, even though she still talks to him. Apparently, she has developed feelings for him now. As I said, my daughter can't be fooled, so she'll eventually realize her mom broke that promise. There's no need for me to tell her right now. Currently, I'm in the process of refinancing my house, and she's searching for a house of her own with her rich aunt co-signing for her. Hopefully, she'll find something soon. Also, one more thing, and I know this might be controversial. Yes, I have evidence, and yes, I know everything about this guy now, but I've decided not to tell his wife. I'm not proud to admit it, but my motives are entirely selfish and self-serving. The fact is, if I tell her, they might get divorced, and then, when my wife leaves, she has an already made relationship waiting for her. A wealthy guy who, even after divorce, will still be rich, taking her on expensive dates, nice vacations, and helping with her bills. Meanwhile, I'll be struggling. As much as I want to hurt this guy, I want to hurt her more. When she leaves, her sneaking around is over, but his isn't. They won't be able to go on dates, and she'll see how much of a side piece she really is. They'll only be able to meet at her house, and he'll have to leave as soon as he's finished. He won't be giving her any money because it could tip off his wife. Now that she has feelings for him, she'll see if he's willing to leave his wife and family for her. I'm betting he won't, but if he does, fine. He'll have to be the one to have the courage to do it. I'm not going to do his dirty work for him. That's what happened with her rich aunt. She had an affair with a married man. The wife found out and left, and she moved right in, going from a broke single mom to a millionaire. That might happen with my wife, but I'm not going to help make it happen. Update: I assured my kids that I'd keep their lives as stable as possible, and I stuck to that. In August, we finalized the divorce. While still here, she searched for houses but got outbid 16 times. I discovered a house nearby she liked, spoke to the owner, and he let her have it without other bids. It feels good knowing my kids are just 30 seconds away. The divorce agreement was a win for me. No alimony, no child support, 50/50 custody. I kept the house and paid her the equity, and I was able to refi before interest rates skyrocketed. Over the next few months, I refurnished my house, focused on my kids, and stayed positive. I continued going to the gym and working. It's been good. I've been friendly with her throughout, which put my kids at ease and helped them get used to everything. She even joined us for Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve at my sister's. People might think I'm crazy, but letting go of ill will and helping my kids celebrate the holidays normally makes me happy. Financially, I'm doing great. I'm unsure about her situation. She wasn't great at budgeting. We're supposed to split costs for the kids, but I end up covering more, which is fine. In December, I met a wonderful woman who lives an hour away. Divorced with 2 kids, due to the custody schedule, we see each other a few times a month, but she makes me happy. I don't know about my ex's dating life, or if she's still seeing the guy. I know she's been with others, but I don't ask. One night, she went out and got jumped, which, I won't lie, made me laugh. As for the guy she cheated with, I've told some mutual friends. One couple I'm friends with saw him with his family at a function and started having a conversation in front of them where they mentioned my name and that I knew about the affair. They said I knew who the guy was but hadn't done anything yet. Then they started saying stuff like, "Man, if he decides to go after him, they won't find that guy's body for 50 years. And crap like that, just laughing and watching him sweat without letting on they knew it was him. I don't think my ex ever told him I knew about the affair, so that was probably a nice surprise for him. I'm sure I'll run into him eventually, not sure how that will play out, but I'm not going out and seeking it. So, 16 months after D-Day, I have a new girlfriend, a great relationship with my kids, and a happy work life. Physically, I'm in great shape, and financially, I'm doing well. It couldn't have worked out better for me. For those going through it, stay positive. Don't let resentment take over. Work out a deal without lawyers if money is tight. Maintain an amicable relationship for your kids. Exercise to de-stress, and remember, every situation is different. Find the path that works for your situation. They're gone and likely not coming back. For your best interest, trust is gone, so move on and find someone who deserves you. If you don't meet people often, try a dating app like Bumble. They work. Third story. My 37-year-old wife and I, a 38-year-old man, have been married for 13 years, but she had an affair for the past 2 years. I discovered this last week, the night before my grandmother's funeral. I never imagined my wife could deceive me like this, and it's breaking my heart. The husband of my wife's affair partner contacted me on Facebook Messenger to disclose the affair. I was 2 hours away, in another state, for the funeral, so I held myself together until after the funeral, and then drove home to confront my wife. I sensed that things between us weren't good in early 2021. I noticed a change in my wife's behavior and attitude, which I initially attributed to untreated depression following our dog's passing away in July 2020. She became less loving, we fought more, and she stopped helping around the house. She occasionally used hurtful language during arguments, creating a negative atmosphere at home. I only found relief when she was away for work. Frustrated and unhappy, I began considering leaving her around November 2021, feeling taken advantage of for all the responsibilities I shouldered in our home. Despite not having children, I worked full-time and managed 85% of the household chores. Her main tasks when not traveling for work were playing with our dogs and doing her own laundry, while I handled the rest. During this time, my wife experienced strange physical pains and ailments. Initially, she thought she had a heart attack but discovered it was a panic attack. These pains reappeared in different areas, including headaches, stomach aches, and rashes. Despite doctor clearance after tests, the pain would resurface in new forms. I suggested therapy for potential anxiety, depression, and hypochondria, but she refused, convinced she was dying of cancer, creating daily frustration. When the affair partner's husband contacted me, I realized my wife's supposed illnesses were likely a response to the guilt and stress from the affair. She carried on this affair for 2 years, having closeness during work trips and coordinating meetings at hotels. This happened twice, once paid for by her and once by my wife on a credit card I couldn't access. They communicated through a fake Facebook Messenger account, exchanging explicit photos and sometimes having a cyber relationship. After confronting her about the affair, my wife admitted to additional medical tests due to fears of contracting an STD unknown to me. Our attachment declined since 2021 as she feared transmitting something to me. I'm devastated, not only by the affair but also by how she treated me during these 2 years. I feel betrayed and taken advantage of for maintaining our home while working. Although we moved states around May this year, no longer living near the woman, they remained in contact. They met in early December during her work trip to our new area. My wife claims they only talked in the car, refusing a hotel, and her story aligns with his. I'm incredibly upset and hurt, crying every day and struggling to eat. This morning, I scheduled an appointment next week to see a therapist and a divorce attorney consultation in the upcoming weeks. My wife is saying sorry, claiming she'll do anything to keep me and be a better spouse. She's been shedding tears, using the typical lines you often hear when someone gets caught. Although she insists I'm not to blame, she can't provide a reason for the affair. I find it challenging to overcome not only the lying and deception, but also how I was mistreated for nearly 2 years. 6 months ago, I suggested marriage counseling, and she responded by telling me I needed therapy. Fortunately, I have the support of my family and some close, trusted friends. However, I live thousands of miles away from everyone, so I feel alone in this. We recently bought our home last year when we moved, and I'm uncertain about the cost of getting out of this mortgage. Due to my grandmother's passing, I am set to inherit a decent amount of money, slightly more than my annual income, in about 6 to 8 weeks when we finalize her accounts. I won't be putting this money in any account with her name or access. I plan to inform the attorney I'm consulting with about this financial aspect. Over the last 2 years, I feel like I've been worn down, and this affair has now completely shattered me. While I believe I can handle this on my own, I've spent 15 years with this person who is supposed to be my best friend. I've prioritized her career over mine, relocating across the country for her. I'm scared of making the wrong decision, but my gut feeling tells me to leave this deceitful person.
Story 2.
I opened our marriage, got pregnant, and now my family disowned me while my husband wants a divorce. I'm a 38-year-old woman, you can call me Francine, and my husband, let's call him Rye, is 44. We got married when I was 19, just a month after giving birth to our daughter, whom we'll call Libby. Libby is now 19 years old. Almost a year later, our son, whom we'll call Craig, was born. Both kids now attend the same college, which is 5 hours away from us. Despite marrying young and with limited financial resources while raising a child, Rye and I managed quite well from the beginning. We had a wonderful life. Rye has a good job now and has always been an excellent provider, husband and father, even during those early days. I also worked 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We have plenty of money, own our home, and have a decent savings. Our family was incredibly stable, and my husband, kids, and I formed an unbreakable team until I fell under the influence of a very manipulative person. It all began innocently enough. We have a beloved dog who is an integral part of our family. As I mentioned earlier, I work on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, so I'm home on Tuesdays and Thursdays. On those days, I take our dog to the park. On the days I work, Rye comes home during his lunch break to walk our dog, and we both walk her on the weekends. About 3 months ago, while at the park, I met a man, let's call him Leonard, and he's 37 years old. His dog and ours started playing together. Leonard mentioned that he had seen me there on multiple occasions with my dog, but I couldn't recall ever seeing him before. Coincidentally, we began encountering each other at the park every time I visited. With each interaction, we engaged in more conversations and became casual friends. Nothing inappropriate occurred. We simply chatted as fellow dog lovers. One evening during dinner, I mentioned my conversations with a man named Leonard from the dog park to my husband. I asked if he had ever noticed Leonard there. My husband replied that he hadn't, and I informed him that Leonard's dog had become good friends with ours. We shared a laugh about it, and the subject was dropped. Time passed, and then things between Leonard and me started to change. About 2 months ago, while chatting at the dog park, Leonard mentioned that he lived in a nearby luxury apartment complex. This complex was roughly 1/4 of a mile from the dog park and about 1/2 a mile from our home. I commented on how nice the apartments looked from the outside and asked him about their interior. I mentioned that a friend of mine was considering renting there, which was true at the time. Leonard then suggested that I walk over to his apartment with my dog to take a quick look and some photos for my friend. I knew I should have politely declined, but I ended up agreeing. Once I entered his apartment, I immediately realized that I had crossed a line of appropriateness. Leonard showed me around, and I stayed for about 10 minutes, thanked him, and mentioned that I needed to head home. He then inquired if I'd be back at the park the following Tuesday. I replied affirmatively and departed. This marked the beginning of my infidelity, as I failed to inform Rye about my visit to Leonard's apartment when I returned home that night. Instead, I became even more attentive to my husband, prepared a wonderful dinner, and cuddled with him on the couch until we retired to our bedroom. It was a delightful evening. The subsequent Tuesday, I once again met Leonard at the park, and we conversed for nearly 2 hours. Toward the end of our discussion, I informed him that we needed to distance ourselves from our friendship, as we had crossed the boundaries of appropriateness. He acknowledged this, but expressed that it felt so right and that we shared an incredible chemistry. At this point, I could have retracted and put an end to things, but regrettably, I concurred with him. Things escalated rapidly from there, and the following Tuesday, I spent the afternoon with Leonard at his apartment, becoming physically intimate with him. Surprisingly, that evening, I experienced minimal guilt or remorse for my actions. Instead, I felt a heightened desire and passion for my husband, and we shared a wonderful night together. Reflecting on this now, I am utterly disgusted with myself, but I must be honest. Leonard and I continued to rendezvous at his place every Tuesday and Thursday until my D-Day this past Friday, which was almost 2 months from the day our physical relationship began. I should have realized that something was amiss with my husband 2 weeks ago when I noticed a sudden change in his behavior, but I was too ensnared in the affair to notice, or perhaps to care. That's when my husband's behavior shifted. He began responding with brief answers and avoided engaging in conversation with me. He also turned down my requests for intimacy on multiple occasions and no longer initiated it himself. During this period, he started working late, often not returning home until after 8 p.m. He claimed that he and his colleagues were engrossed in a major presentation and that they were all having takeout meals at the office. While such significant projects did occur occasionally, it was unusual for them to persist for 2 consecutive weeks. When I questioned him about it, he simply stated that it was a highly classified project set to conclude on Friday. I accepted his explanation and felt relieved, anticipating the return of my affectionate husband. He assured me that he would make up for lost time and promised an emotionally charged weekend ahead. However, the emotions I encountered on Friday were not what I had expected. Upon arriving home, I discovered a large manila envelope taped to the door bearing my name. Upon opening it, I was utterly shocked. The envelope contained numerous pages of messages exchanged between Leonard and me on the fake Facebook accounts we had created to communicate during our affair. As I perused these messages, I burst into tears and struggled to catch my breath. It was so overwhelming that I even contemplated calling. I tossed the envelope to the floor and began pacing around the house, uncertain about who had left it at my door. Was it Leonard? Or perhaps my husband? Or could it have been someone else? My questions were answered when I entered the bedroom. There, right in the middle of the bed, sat a white gift box adorned with a large red bow and a card tag bearing my name in the to line and my husband's name in the from line. Anxious and trembling, I carefully removed the bow and opened the box, only to discover divorce papers inside. At that moment, I realized my world had collapsed, and I simply lay on the bed, sobbing uncontrollably into a pillow. After about an hour of pondering my next steps and rehearsing what I would say to my husband, I called him, but he didn't answer. I persisted with my calls, but he remained unresponsive. Resorting to texting, I messaged him but received no reply. Anxiously, I paced around the house, wondering how to handle the situation. I then attempted to contact my daughter and son through both calls and texts, but they too were not answering, which struck me as unusual. Shortly thereafter, I received a text from my husband informing me that he was aware of everything, as were our children, his extended family, and, as of 15 minutes ago, my own parents. He explained that he had moved out and signed a lease for an apartment, adding that I would soon be hearing from his attorney. He concluded the message by saying, "Enjoy your new life with Leonard." Upon reading his message, I wept for hours, pausing only to answer a call from my mother. However, instead of providing comfort, she launched into a tirade without allowing me to utter a word, ultimately hanging up on me. I repeatedly tried calling her back, but she refused to pick up. I reached out to my dad and he answered. When I asked to speak with my mom, he informed me that she had nothing more to say to me. At that moment, my father proceeded to express his deep disappointment and shame in me, admitting that he never imagined his own daughter could commit such an act. His words shattered me, and I couldn't hold back my tears as I repeatedly apologized. He remained silent as I continued to speak. Once I had finished pouring out my emotions, he advised me to compose myself and strive for better. I responded with a simple, "Okay, Daddy, I will," and we concluded our conversation. At this juncture, I felt too humiliated to confide in my friends or another family member, so I retreated to my bedroom and cried alone. I decided it was necessary to call Leonard, both to inform him that our relationship had come to an end and to seek a comforting presence during this difficult time. When I dialed his number, he immediately questioned why I was using my phone instead of our fake Facebook accounts. I didn't mince words and told him that my husband had discovered our affair and was pursuing a divorce. Leonard's response was a simple, "Oh no, he knows? How?" My answer was that I didn't know how he found out. Leonard inquired further, asking if my husband had stumbled upon my Facebook account. I speculated that he must have. Leonard pressed on, asking whether my husband knew who he was. I confirmed that he did, as my husband had mentioned Leonard by name in the text message I received. Leonard's reaction was a string of expletives, and he began shouting the F word loudly, causing his dog to start barking. After his outburst, he composed himself and stated, "Okay, I'm sorry this happened, but you were careless. Let's sever all ties, delete our accounts and phone numbers, and hopefully you can salvage your marriage. Please don't contact me again." I found myself both surprised and disgusted by his lack of courage, and I simply responded with an, "Okay." That was it. There were no apologies for wrecking my marriage, no inquiries about how he could make amends, no expressions of gratitude, just self-preservation talk from a shallow individual. How could I have been so foolish as to cheat on Rye with anyone, let alone someone as repulsive as Leonard? I'm writing this at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, which should give you an idea of my state of mind. I've taken the entire week off to focus on trying to get my husband and kids to talk to me so I can offer my apologies and work on healing and moving forward. Does anyone have any suggestions on what to do next? My spirit is crushed, and I feel utterly alone. I've lost everything except my dog as a consequence of my actions. Have any of you who have strayed experienced being cut off so swiftly by your spouses? I mean, Rye is gone and wants nothing to do with me. I understand how hurt he is, but to completely remove me from his life and initiate divorce proceedings over this single foolish mistake seems incredibly harsh. Please help. Update. I'm returning here because I need an outlet to cope with the intense pain I'm currently experiencing. I just had a conversation with my kids while they were on their way back to town after 3 days of them ignoring my calls and texts. I had hoped they were calling to talk and allow me to apologize. Unfortunately, what I got was a barrage of insults, disrespect, and hurtful names. These were words I had never heard either of my kids use before. Libby, in particular, was exceptionally harsh, and it seemed to influence her brother's behavior. I did apologize, emphasizing that I had been manipulated by Leonard and felt somewhat victimized by that guy. I reminded them of the years of being a great mother and a good wife to their father up until now. However, my daughter insisted that I was once great, but had now become terrible, the worst. She concluded the call by informing me that she and her brother would be spending the weekend with their dad and I shouldn't expect to see them at all. This deeply saddened me, especially because Sunday is Mother's Day, and my kids and husband used to make that day special for me. This year, I'll be alone with my dog, who at least still loves me unconditionally. I understand that much of what Libby and Craig are feeling is the initial anger one experiences after being betrayed. Still, I can't help but feel awful about their reaction. I'm not seeking pity here, just some words of encouragement. I'm grateful to those who have sent messages of support. It has genuinely helped me so far. I'll provide updates when I can. Update 2, I wanted to provide an update as I've received many requests to do so. I've been attending individual counseling for 2 weeks now, and it's been quite helpful. My counselor is a wonderful woman who has given me the courage to keep moving forward. She explained that at this point, I've done everything I can to mend the relationships with my family. The best course of action now is to step back and wait. If they come back, it means we always had and will have love. If they don't, it suggests they never really loved me. Additionally, she recommended transcendental meditation, which I started last week. It has brought me a greater sense of peace and inner calm. I feel more in control of my mind than ever before. So, that's where things stand in my world right now. I'll provide further updates if needed. In my next update, I hope to report that my husband and kids have welcomed me back and we're once again a happy family. Update 3, it's been a while, but I'm here with an update. Get ready, as I have a lot to share, including some good and bad news. A couple of weeks after my last update, I discovered I was pregnant. Yes, at the age of 38, I became pregnant after trying for more than 15 years to have a third child. This news was both shocking and overwhelming. I was filled with joy at the prospect of the baby being Rise, but I also felt terrified at the thought that it might be Leonard's child. I went into complete panic mode. My first instinct was to tell Rye, but I realized that if I did and the baby wasn't his, I would lose him forever. Moreover, if the baby turned out to be Leonard's, I didn't want to keep it. If I ended the pregnancy and Rye ever found out, he would never forgive me because he's against such procedures. So here's what I did. I contacted a DNA clinic and inquired if they could perform a prenatal DNA test without needing the father's saliva. The lab said it was possible, but only with specific other body samples, which I didn't have. The only potential sample was hair follicles. I found a few on my husband's brush, but there weren't nearly enough for a complete sample, so I hit a dead end there. My contingency plan was to reach out to Leonard and ask him to participate in and cover the cost of a prenatal DNA test. However, he had blocked me and deleted his Facebook account, so I decided to visit his workplace and catch him when he arrived. When he saw me, he initially tried to ignore me and then, with a disgusted tone, asked what I was doing there. I insisted that I had something important to discuss and we needed to have a conversation. He expressed his disinterest in talking to me any further and apologized for being a factor in my marriage falling apart. Internally, I thought, yeah, right, why didn't you consider that before relentlessly pursuing me? Without hesitation, I blurted out that I was pregnant and he was the father. He responded by saying, "Oh no, you're not going to trap me with a baby. I'm familiar with this tactic." I told him to pay close attention. I said that if he didn't want me to walk into his office and immediately report his inappropriate behavior to the HR department, he needed to comply with my request. I then instructed him to schedule and cover the cost of a paternity test, providing him with the clinic's contact information. I made it clear that if he didn't take these steps within 48 hours, I would proceed with reporting the situation to his HR department. On that evening, Leonard unblocked my phone and sent me a text stating that he had scheduled an appointment for the following Tuesday at 10 a.m., knowing I had the day off. We both arrived at the clinic office, but there was no conversation between us. They called Leonard in first, where they collected his saliva sample, and then it was my turn, and they drew a blood sample. It took a week to receive the results, but the wait was worth it because Leonard was not the father. Overwhelmed with joy, I fell to my knees and offered thanks to the Lord for blessing my husband and me with another precious child we had longed for. I was eager to share the news with Rye, but I still had no means to contact him, as he had blocked me, and I remained unaware of his whereabouts. At this point, my children were still avoiding me and barely communicating with me. I texted my daughter and son, explaining that I had something very important to discuss and asked if they could arrange a three-way call. My daughter repeatedly inquired about the nature of the call, to which I simply replied that I would share the information during the call. We set up the call and I delivered the good news. However, instead of sharing in the joy of welcoming a new sibling, both of them responded with bitterness and unkindness towards me. They immediately jumped to the conclusion that the baby belonged to Leonard. I reassured them, saying that I was certain it was their father's child. My son then inquired how I could be so sure, and I explained that I had calculated it based on the estimated conception date. At that time, I didn't have the actual conception date and didn't want to mention the DNA test with Leonard, so I opted to clarify it in this manner. My daughter then accused me of intentionally trapping her father by getting pregnant. I asked her how that could be possible, as all of this occurred before your father even knew about my involvement with Leonard. She responded, reiterating her point, accusing me of deliberately getting pregnant by her dad in case he discovered my affair. She believed the baby was my way of ensnaring him. I refuted her claim, emphasizing that it was absurd, and reminded her that her father and I had been trying for years to conceive. After lengthy discussions, they eventually agreed to talk to their father and ask him to call me. I anxiously awaited Rye's call that night, but it never came. The following morning passed without any communication as well. Then, a little after 1 p.m., the subsequent day, I received a call from Rye's attorney. She left me a voicemail, and I promptly returned her call. She explained that she was representing her client and had been informed about my pregnancy, along with my claim that the baby belonged to her client. Upon hearing this, I couldn't hold back my emotions and started crying uncontrollably. I begged her to allow me to speak directly with my husband. The attorney was empathetic and understanding but remained firm. Once I had composed myself, she informed me that Rye was requesting a paternity test for confirmation. I readily agreed and offered to arrange it as soon as possible, even volunteering to cover the cost from my savings. The attorney requested that I set up the appointment and specified that her client would provide his saliva sample at a time when I wouldn't be present. I consented, but I spent the entire night in tears, grappling with the fact that Rye believed I might deceive him about something as significant as this. I couldn't fathom why he wouldn't accompany me to the appointment. The paternity test was conducted, and earlier this morning the results came in, conclusively confirming that Rye is the father. Although I had already known this, receiving the official results brought immense relief to my mind. I'm currently working on leaving the terrible nightmare that Leonard pulled me into in the past, and I'm eager to rebuild my relationship and trust with my family. I'm very grateful for all the support and encouragement you've given me to help me through this challenging time. Final update: I received numerous requests for an update, so I'm here to share how things have been progressing for my family and me. While we're still a work in progress, each day gets us closer to rebuilding the family we used to be, before Leonard selfishly caused harm and my errors contributed to it. Firstly, Rye and I went through with the divorce despite my pleading and begging, and even with the confirmation that I was carrying his child, he proceeded with the divorce. I had high hopes after the DNA test confirmed he was the father, eagerly anticipating speaking with him and being held in his arms while he assured me everything would be all right. However, that moment never came. Instead, we had a meeting at his attorney's office, which was recorded. During this meeting, he informed me of his decision to proceed with the divorce and expressed his desire for us to transition into a good co-parenting relationship. I couldn't hold back my tears and asked for a moment to compose myself. When I returned, we discussed custody arrangements, with him wanting to split custody time with me. I told him that I preferred him to have full custody, which once again brought me to tears. Ultimately, our divorce was finalized, and we divided assets and custody of our young child evenly. I received 1 year of alimony and ongoing child support. Rye also agreed to cover 50% of the taxes, insurance, and utilities for our family home for 2 years to ensure a safe and secure environment for the baby. In late January, our precious little one was born, and he's indeed a miraculous child. Not only did he grace our lives after 15 years of trying, but he's also been instrumental in reuniting our family. My relationship with my daughter, Libby, and my son, Craig, has returned to normal, and they adore their little brother. Libby even joined me in the delivery room during the birth. Since his birth, both my kids have been coming home from college every weekend, taking turns holding the baby. Rye, my husband, has also been a constant presence in my house since the birth. He comes straight from work and stays with me until I put the baby down for the night. Just yesterday, he brought takeout dinner for the two of us, and while we didn't eat together, I see this as a positive development. He and I are on very friendly terms, and we haven't brought up the affair or the divorce. I haven't pressured him or discussed the possibility of us reconciling. I'm still attending individual counseling, and my therapist advised me to give him space and avoid discussing our relationship, which I've been doing, and it seems to be working. Each passing day, I feel like I'm gradually regaining the love and connection with my husband. I've applied a similar approach with Libby and Craig. If I do manage to win Rye back as a husband, or even as a life partner, I'm committed to never jeopardizing our relationship again. He, along with my kids, means the world to me, and I'll do everything in my power to show them how much I value and cherish them. I don't have any more updates at the moment. While I wish things could return to the way they used to be, I understand it's not possible, so I'm focusing on appreciating what I currently have, which, in my opinion, is quite wonderful. This might be my final post unless Rye and I decide to officially reconcile. If that happens, I'll return to share the good news with everyone. Once again, a big thank you to all who supported me throughout this journey. Alright, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned, and let's dive in. Hello, I just need to share what's been bothering me lately and could use an outside perspective. I'll try to sum it up for you in the end. In February, my husband, 33 male, and I, 31 female, had been married for a year when he had to go on a crucial business trip to the UK for 3 weeks. Unfortunately, things got extended, and he and his team had to stay an extra 2 weeks to finalize the deal. This marked the first time we'd been apart since we got together 6 years ago, so I was dealing with a whirlwind of emotions. I tend to become overly clingy and emotional when things don't go as planned, and this is a trait I've always had. I'll admit that it can be challenging to live with me at times. Additionally, I grapple with some mental health issues that contribute to my insecurities and paranoia, especially when it comes to the fear that my husband might be cheating. The fact that he extended his trip by 2 weeks only fueled my concerns. I even went as far as calling his office to confirm that his entire team was indeed still in the UK. During this period of separation, I struck up a friendship with our neighbor, and one night after watching a movie together, things took a turn. I recognized that I allowed things to get out of control, but I was overwhelmed with worry about my husband's situation. That night, our neighbor became physically affectionate, but my anxiety caused me to stop things from progressing further. However, the following day, I revisited the situation because I didn't want to regret not knowing where things might lead. They did lead to a full-blown affair over the next few encounters, whether at my place or his. I continued to be anxious about my husband's situation, but I didn't feel an overwhelming sense of guilt. This has led me to question if there's something wrong with me. Now, things took a messy turn when my husband returned home in early March without any prior warning. He thought he'd surprise me, as if that was a good idea. The house was in complete disarray, empty beer cans and snack wrappers scattered all over the bed, resembling a tornado aftermath, and dirty laundry strewn around. It was quite a sight. I suppose it's somewhat understandable, given that I wasn't prepared for my husband's unexpected return. Otherwise, I would have tidied up, especially the bed, which was a dead giveaway. When he inquired, I simply explained that I had friends over because I was feeling lonely. We played games, had some drinks, and it was nothing out of the ordinary. I'm not sure if he bought my explanation, but after seeing the state of things, he decided to do some cleaning. I tried to dissuade him because I knew there might be incriminating evidence lying around, and indeed there was. He discovered a bag in the trash containing a used rubber, its wrapper, and a toothbrush. My heart sank, and my hands trembled. It felt unreal. Somehow I managed to maintain my composure and informed my husband that there were two couples among the friends I had invited over, implying that things had gotten intimate. My husband gazed at me for an extended moment, and in that instance I could tell he didn't believe me, so I came clean about the affair, about my involvement with our neighbor. My husband's expression shifted to one of disappointment, hurt, anger, and fear all at once. I'm not sure what came over me, but the next thing I knew, I was on my knees, pleading for forgiveness and another chance. However, deep down, I'm not even certain if I deserve one. I realize I made a massive mistake. I tried to explain that it was a one-time thing, driven by my vulnerability during his absence, but he didn't believe it. He suggested that we might have been involved throughout the time he was away. My husband outlined 3 conditions for us to move forward. It was a singular occurrence. It wasn't premeditated, just a foolish, impulsive blunder, perhaps under the influence of alcohol. There are absolutely no romantic feelings between us. He made it clear that if all these conditions aren't met, he'd leave. He also asked to review my phone conversations with the other guy from the past few months to ensure there were no plans or signs of romance. However, I had deleted those conversations without any backups, so all he has left is to trust me. Frankly, if he had seen those messages, it might have been the end of our marriage anyway. My instinct tells me he might be better off without me. I'm contemplating initiating a divorce. I've heard he's already consulted a lawyer, and I'd prefer to be the one to file rather than him serving me. So, what are your thoughts? I know I wronged him, but I believe there must be a way to navigate through this. Couples face more challenging situations every day and still manage to sustain their relationships. I'm open to your advice and eager to hear your perspectives. Update: Hello, everyone. I wanted to provide an update on the situation I previously discussed. I'm grateful for all your advice and support during this tough time. Having this community to turn to has been a great help. After doing some deep thinking and having more conversations, my husband and I decided to sit down and talk once more. I realized it was time to be completely honest about everything, which meant sharing the truth about the affair that occurred during his business trip. It was a challenging conversation, but I believed it was necessary for both of us to fully grasp what had transpired. I confessed my mistakes, acknowledged my wrongdoings, and admitted to not considering his feelings. It was an intense and emotional moment, but I felt that complete transparency was crucial. In response, my husband experienced a range of emotions. He felt hurt, angry, and confused while trying to process what I was revealing. He requested some time to contemplate, and I agreed, giving him the space to process it all. During this period, he reached a decision and shared his thoughts with me. He expressed that he felt hurt not only by the affair itself, but also by the subsequent lies and deception. Trust had been shattered, and he recognized that rebuilding it would be a lengthy and challenging process. He asked me to leave the house, explaining that he needed time to figure out our future. However, I declined because, despite my actions, I'm still his wife and have legal rights to the house. I couldn't simply leave without a plan in place. Currently, tensions are high and emotions remain raw in our situation. He has attempted various methods to persuade me to leave, including becoming very angry, having violent outbursts, resorting to guilt trips, and generally being manipulative. However, I've reached a point where I have nothing to lose, so I've straightforwardly informed him that I won't be moving out. I acknowledge that he needs time to process everything and make a decision about our future, but he'll have to do it with me in the house. Don't misunderstand me. I deeply regret the pain I've caused, and I'm fully committed to taking responsibility for my mistakes. I don't believe that this should be the end of our story. I have much more to offer, definitely not to the neighbor, just to clarify. I understand that there's a long road ahead, but I'm willing to put in the effort required to rebuild trust if that's what's necessary to salvage our marriage. I genuinely believe that every couple faces their own unique challenges, and it's possible to overcome difficult situations if both parties are willing to make the effort. I'm still hopeful for an opportunity to mend our relationship, but I'm also preparing for the possibility that my husband might decide that parting ways is the best option for us. Once again, I want to express my gratitude for your support, advice, and understanding. Having a space to share and receive guidance during such a challenging period means a lot. I'll continue to provide updates as things develop. Please keep us in your thoughts and send positive vibes our way. Update. Hello, I'm back with another update. Recently, my husband served me with divorce papers, and it was a devastating blow. I had held on to a slim hope, but it seems he's determined to move forward with the divorce. Despite still living under the same roof, there's noticeable tension, and he's been avoiding me as if I have a contagious illness. Our families have been informed, and understandably, they haven't been supportive of my actions and decisions. Both my parents and in-laws have strongly criticized me, and currently we're not on speaking terms. I'm navigating this difficult situation on my own, and it's been incredibly challenging. The thought of divorce is frightening, not only due to the potential societal shame, but also because of the impact it would have on my life. I acknowledge my mistakes, but I'm also afraid of being alone and having to support myself again. This fear may have contributed to my strong reaction when my husband confronted me about leaving the house. I do care about him, and I'm beginning to understand that I must take responsibility for my actions. The idea of us not being together anymore is painful, but it might be a consequence I have to face. I've had the desire to start a family, and in the past few days I've been feeling unwell, so there's a glimmer of hope on that front. I realize that given the circumstances, it may not be a possibility now, but I also believe my husband would not abandon his child, so perhaps having a baby could be a solution. I'm aware that eventually, people in our small town may find out about our situation, and that's something I'll have to confront. I'm heading out shortly to have a pregnancy test done at the lab. I've tried home kits, but they've all come back negative. I'm anxious and feeling ill just thinking about what might happen if I'm not actually pregnant. Is this truly the end for us? Edit. I'm not pregnant.
Story 3.
Dear Jeff, as I sit down to put my thoughts into words, I can't help but feel a mix of emotions swirling within me. Leaving you wasn't an easy decision, and I hope you understand that it's not about blame or resentment. It's about acknowledging the changes that have occurred within me, and recognizing that I owe it to both of us to address them honestly. Our journey together has been filled with moments of joy, laughter, and shared experiences that I will always treasure. From the early days of our relationship to building a life together, we've weathered storms and celebrated triumphs side by side. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of myself amidst the familiarity of our routine. I want you to know that this decision isn't a reflection of your worth or our love for each other. It's about me needing to rediscover who I am outside of our relationship. I've spent so long defining myself in relation to you that I've neglected my own dreams and desires. Leaving you this letter is my way of being honest with both of us. I couldn't bear to see the hurt in your eyes or hear the pain in your voice as I try to explain these feelings. It's not fair to either of us to prolong the inevitable, and I hope you can find it in your heart to understand. I wish you nothing but happiness and fulfillment in the days ahead. You deserve someone who can love you wholeheartedly, without reservation or hesitation. And I hope that someday we can look back on our time together with fondness, grateful for the lessons learned and the memories shared. Take care of yourself, Jeff. You'll always hold a special place in my heart. I realize that what I'm about to say might come across as hypocritical and selfish, but the truth is, it is selfish, and that's why I've made the decision to leave. I crave the excitement of pursuing someone new, the thrill of a fresh romance, and unfortunately, you can't provide that anymore. When we were younger, you were irresistible. playing guitar with Buddy in the band, riding your Harley in that hot leather jacket, your blonde hair flowing in the wind as you swept me off my feet on the dance floor, whether it was at a rock and roll club or in a ballroom. You created beautiful paintings of me and the kids. But over time, we became complacent in our relationship. The gigs with the band faded as you took on coaching soccer. The Harley now sits idle in the garage beneath the kids' sports gear in front of the minivan, and my knees can't keep up on the dance floor anymore. Though you still have that beautiful hair. Now that the kids are grown, I no longer feel comfortable with the minivan lifestyle that you seem to have embraced. I want to assure you that I haven't cheated on you, and you remain the only man I've ever been romantic with. However, I have found myself drawn to other men. Before I considered any further actions, I felt it was necessary to end things with you. I couldn't bear the idea of betraying your trust by sneaking around behind your back. Jeff, I've always loved you too much for that. I'm certain our paths will cross again, but I have no desire to discuss this matter with you. I've already spoken with Sam and asked him to handle our divorce proceedings. He's prepared the necessary paperwork, leaving you with everything except my clothing and personal belongings, which I've already taken. I've also agreed to split my pension with you and take on half of our debts, excluding the mortgage. It's only fair, after all, I played a role in incurring those debts, and I want to ensure fairness. Please grieve in private so that when we attend events for the kids, we can avoid any unnecessary drama. However, I believe in fairness, so if you feel the need to respond, I promise to read your letter carefully and respect your thoughts. With love, Ellen.
I pored over the note repeatedly, rooted to the spot in the kitchen where I found it. Tears hadn't come. Not yet. I was too numb. There were no signs of this impending revelation, no expression of dissatisfaction, no indication of desires unmet, no arguments, and no hints of another man in her life. We shared touches, kisses, smiles, all the gestures of a couple planning a future together. In fact, I had spent the past year wooing her, attempting to reignite our passion now that our youngest had left for college. I bought jewelry, only to be scolded for its expense. She preferred chocolate. I relinquished control of our closeness, believing I was causing her stress by initiating lovemaking. She insisted that holding hands sufficed. Perhaps she did drop a hint, but I brushed it off, attributing it to her adjusting to middle age. So there I stood, the last to realize. I grabbed a beer and stepped into the shower simultaneously. After finishing one, I reached for two more and returned to the shower, leaving behind a trail of water on her floors without fear of reprimand. I drank with determination to exhaust my stash, although like wine enthusiasts cellar their wines, I stored fine beers. While I didn't dent my beer collection, if I had, I'd have turned to my wines. However, I did make a significant impact on my consciousness. The next morning, I awoke with a throbbing headache, lying undressed on the basement floor after the shower. I stumbled upstairs, purged everything I'd consumed, crawled into bed, and wept. When I was 11, my grandmother passed away. During her wake and funeral, Grandpa took me aside and imparted wisdom. You have 3 days to mourn a loss. As God resurrected the dead in 3 days, you can resurrect your life. Cry, scream, vent your frustrations. When you're old enough, have a drink, engage in a good brawl, pray. Allow yourself these actions, then move forward. Honor the departed by progressing. A man doesn't dwell on a past he's lost. He lives in the present he's shaping and the future he's moving toward. Grandpa's words resonated deeply. I viewed my wife's departure as the end of our marriage. I wept, drank to excess, battered sheetrock walls with my bleeding fists, and used furniture to release my anguish. I yelled, I kicked, I drank. I scarcely ate, justifying that beer consists of grain, yeast, and water, akin to bread, and wine is derived from fruit. There, my food groups condensed into 2 bottles. I was on summer break when she chose to leave, waiting until the day after the school year ended. It was a well-timed decision. But by the following Tuesday, I emerged from my mourning. The first thing I did was call my kids. Ellen had already informed them of her choice, and they had desperately tried to reach me. I was too intoxicated to pick up, but I reassured them I was all right. Then I set about tidying up the house and arranged for my favorite charity to collect a truckload of donations. I had no intention of holding on to the remnants of a failed marriage. I kept only the family heirloom furniture, boxing up photos and albums for the kids. Everything else was treated the same way, with the ridiculous knickknacks meeting their end in the trash. What did I care about Spanish pottery or brass cats from Portugal? Over the next couple of days, I made trips to Home Depot, stocking up on flooring, carpet, paint, and new sheetrock. My aim was to transform the house into my own space. The pink and coral walls and frilly curtains were a thing of the past. I also visited Sam's and completed the divorce paperwork. Since it was uncontested with only one lawyer involved, he said it would likely be finalized around the time school resumed. I sold the minivan and traded it in for a '76 Triumph Spitfire convertible, just as I had always dreamed. It was British racing green with beige leather upholstery and chromed wire wheels. After clearing out the garage of unused clutter, unpacking the Harley was a breeze. Yet, the most significant decision I made was reaching out to Buddy. That call altered my life as swiftly as my wife's departure letter had just days before. Within half an hour of sharing my news with him, Buddy and the gang were at my doorstep. Buddy had been my closest friend since 3rd grade. We formed our band together, played sports together, took the same classes, and even double-dated. He'd been my best man, and I was his. The collapse of my marriage was a profound blow to him, and he wouldn't allow me to navigate the upheaval of my domestic life alone. Our band had disbanded years ago due to life's demands, but our loyal supporters hadn't forgotten us. When I mention Buddy and the boys, it's more than just a handful of guys. We'd played at countless weddings, funerals, parties, and picnics, often offering our services at a discounted rate or for free because we cherished the community that followed us from gig to gig. Good deeds tend to breed more good deeds, and when news spread that I was overhauling my place to make it truly my own, the floodgates of generosity opened wide. Over the next fortnight, painters, carpenters, masons, plumbers, every imaginable tradesman pitched in to fix up much more than just my walls. Within a month, my house had undergone a complete transformation, both inside and out. There's something about a group of guys that attracts a crowd of girls. Their wives and girlfriends began dropping by Project Jeff's house to oversee the renovations, and soon they were bringing along their single friends for what we humorously dubbed Project Jeff's love life. No one was pushy in their matchmaking efforts. It was still too early for that. But it was evident that seeds were being planted, and before long I found myself out dancing and socializing 2 to 3 nights a week. Spontaneous barbecues and gatherings sprang up at my place, and I was never short of company, although I wasn't quite ready to dive into a new relationship before finalizing my divorce. Buddy floated the idea of resurrecting the band. In fact, he had already lined up gigs at clubs where we had old connections. Even before the fresh paint had dried on my walls, Buddy and Jeff made a triumphant return, headlining Friday nights at Jimmy's and commanding Saturdays at a cozy dance club downtown. He even booked us as a duo for Sunday afternoons at a popular seafood joint by the waterfront. It was as if we had never stopped playing together. We were all at similar stages in our lives, with our kids either grown or independent. We all looked pretty sharp and still had our own hair, well, except for Ronnie, our drummer. We hit the ground running. Our loyal fan base emerged from hibernation, eagerly paying their covers to pack the venues every single night. Whenever my sons had the chance, they'd drop by to lend a hand with the renovations, occasionally even joining in with the band. I ensured they understood not to disclose anything to their mom about me and to be truthful if she asked. They conveyed that Dad had been upset initially, but has since moved forward and is doing well. My daughter, living in Australia with her fiancé, received similar instructions. I trusted my kids implicitly to honor my wishes, and I knew they were being honest when they assured me that Ellen was kept in the dark about my well-being. To combat loneliness, I focused on cultivating healthy habits, revamping my diet, and ramping up my exercise regimen. I'd never let myself go out of shape, but now I attacked the pool with gusto and hit the road, whether running or biking, with renewed determination. Every evening before heading off to a gig, I'd hit the weights, alternating between leg days and upper body workouts. Within a month of Ellen's departure, I had rebuilt my home, my social circle, my daily schedule, my relationship with my children, and my physique. It seemed only fitting to respond to her letter. After all, she had initiated the conversation, hadn't she? Dear Ellen, thank you. You were right. Goodbye. Jeff. I sent the email to her. Short and to the point, it conveyed everything I needed it to. I didn't bother seeking out her new address, and truth be told, I didn't really want it. Rumors floated around about her, whispers of her involvement with a younger man who drove a flashy car and had a silver tongue. They'd been spotted together at shore clubs and beaches. Whenever someone tried to fill me in on her life, I politely declined to listen. But among our shared friends, these snippets pieced together a narrative of a whirlwind romance that spanned from September to June or perhaps October to June, or even November to May. But none of it mattered to me. I genuinely wished her well. Grandpa's 3-day rule had guided me through, and I was content with the person I had become, too enamored with my present self to dwell on the past, us. The end of summer marked a melancholy reality for teachers like me, but August was ablaze with musical opportunities. This year was no different. Buddy and I found ourselves booked for festival after festival straight through September. Labor Day saw us performing 2 to 3 times a day. The hectic schedule kept me from checking her emailed response. It wasn't a deliberate snub. I simply thought our exchange was meant to be brief, a way to tie up loose ends, just as she wanted. I was too engrossed in the whirlwind of events and having too much fun to bother with email. In fact, I had almost forgotten about my marital woes when Sam called with news that our divorce proceedings had expedited. As it turned out, a certain clerk with connections to a family court judge was a fan of our band. I was set to be officially single come Friday. After a month and a half of transformative experiences, Friday would mark my return to bachelorhood. We were slated to perform at an arts festival and street fair in town, and suddenly all those scantily clad women with short skirts and plunging necklines were fair game. Cool. The street was packed when we hit the stage. We cranked up the amps to outdoor settings and unleashed our hard-driving blues style. We played covers, belted out originals, and jammed out impromptu tunes, getting the crowd fired up and dancing. It felt exhilarating. The guys had rummaged through our archives and unearthed our old masters from back in the day. We never got around to recording an album before life got in the way. But now we had enough material to fill a couple of makeshift albums. CDs were much easier to produce than vinyl, and we compiled a mix of old and new tracks that flew off the sales table. I was receiving looks from women of all ages, signaling that I was more than ready to end my dry spell. Amidst the chaos, I didn't notice Ellen attempting to sneak backstage, as I slung my guitar onto the back bar of my bike, which I had modified years ago for guitar transport. I missed her rushing toward me. I also missed the moment her face fell upon seeing another woman, Michelle, a busty blonde in her 30s, swinging her leg to sit behind me. It was the first time in the entire 25-year life of my bike that someone else had occupied that seat. I didn't see a tear form in Ellen's eye as I drove away from her. I wish I had. Michelle was incredible. I won't delve into explicit details of our encounter or the intensity of our physical connection. You can find that in another story. Let's just say, I pursued her relentlessly throughout the night, rebounding like a teenager and reaching heights of satisfaction I hadn't experienced in ages. I completely wore her out. By the end of the night, she thanked me for our time together, but suggested I not call her again, perhaps wary of the recovery time needed after our escapade. I knew I couldn't avoid Ellen forever, and I didn't. The next time I saw her was at our regular Friday night gig at Jimmy's. She walked in with her new companion and another couple, and they found a table and ordered drinks. As soon as I spotted her, I signaled to the band that we were deviating from our prepared set list. We had a tradition of playing American Woman whenever we spotted an ex-girlfriend in the crowd, and it was always the wronged guy who took the mic. It was our way of standing in solidarity with our friend. We firmly believed that dating an ex of one of us was off limits, and we never crossed that line. As I began playing the guitar riff in the slower, soulful style that Lenny Kravitz had popularized with his cover of the tune, I found myself enjoying American Woman more than ever before. Pouring my heart and soul into the lyrics, the guitar solos resonated with the crowd, igniting their energy. Unaware of Ellen's reaction, I didn't witness the moment her face fell upon realizing the song was directed at her, but Buddy's wife observed it. Later, she recounted how tears welled in Ellen's eyes as I sang lines like "Stay away from me" and "Go on and let me be," with emotions flowing freely. Ellen left before the song ended, barely maintaining her composure. Meanwhile, her companion and friends stayed behind, continuing to drink and dance into the night. It was evident that trouble was brewing in paradise. A week later, my older son paid me a visit with some intriguing news. It seemed Ellen and her boy toy had a falling out that same night. He was growing weary of her charms, while she struggled to keep up with the energetic lifestyle, both carnally and otherwise, of a man in his 20s. He voiced frustration over Ellen avoiding venues where we performed. Word had spread that the band was back in action, drawing crowds wherever we played. Additionally, he was displeased to learn that Ellen had relinquished her rights to our property in the divorce and had been planning to move into my house. I had suspected him of gold digging, but his audacity was staggering. Perhaps he was unaware of our prenuptial agreement, a precautionary measure devised by Ellen's father, who harbored suspicions about any man's intentions toward his daughter. I had readily agreed to it, as I had no intention of causing her injury. The agreement stipulated that if either of us left the marriage for greener pastures, we forfeited all rights to the family assets, leaving them entirely to the other party. It was likely Ellen remembered this agreement, which might explain why she proposed such an amicable divorce settlement. After Boy-Toy sent her packing, Ellen spent the following night in tears, pouring her heart out to the kids over the phone. I sympathized with her plight, but I had already gone through my 3 days of mourning for my marriage and was now free to offer support without being emotionally entangled. However, the kids weren't pleased with my detached attitude. They still saw me as unattached and believed I should welcome their mom back into the family home, at least temporarily, to help her get back on her feet. But I disagreed. Taking her in would mean dealing with the inevitable mood swings that came with menopause, a challenge I had already experienced during our marriage. Adding to that her feelings of rejection by Boy-Toy, the humiliation of crawling back to me, and potential guilt over leaving me in the first place was not something I was eager to handle on a daily basis. I was enjoying my newfound simplicity and independence too much to disrupt it. As days turned into weeks, the kids toned down their insistence to a more reasonable request for assistance, and I obliged by allowing them access to the storage unit I had rented for our furniture and belongings, which were too valuable to discard, until Ellen found a small apartment of her own. I even lent them the band's truck to help with the move. With the new school year in full swing and a busy schedule for the band, I rarely crossed paths with Ellen. Although we both taught in the same district, we worked in different school buildings, so our encounters were infrequent, and when they did happen, I barely took notice of her. I had become a popular topic of discussion in the rumor mill, perhaps due to the frequent appearances of my Harley or sports car, or maybe it was my increased activity level spilling over into school life, or simply my newfound status as an eligible bachelor. But rumors held little significance for me. The band was thriving. My barbecue parties were legendary for their good times, and I never lacked female companionship. Content as could be, I found myself not missing married life in the slightest. Flying to France for Thanksgiving was a long-held dream of mine, coinciding with the release of Beaujolais Nouveau, and this year, Thanksgiving fell early enough for the calendar to align perfectly. As I packed my bags, I was taken aback when my son called the night before I left, inviting me to a Thanksgiving dinner at Ellen's. He seemed genuinely upset when I explained I already had plans, but he quickly pivoted to suggesting that we host a family Christmas instead. He and his girlfriend offered to handle the cooking, with the condition that I provide the venue. He mentioned that all 3 kids would be coming into town and expressed their desire for a special day to reminisce. I agreed to the Christmas gathering on the condition that Ellen understood she wasn't welcome to bring a date and that I would dedicate my attention to the kids. I was surprised to learn from my son that Ellen wasn't dating at all and was actually quite lonely. Despite this revelation, I didn't delve further into her love life. My primary concern was ensuring a harmonious family gathering, without any awkwardness caused by a new romantic interest. I extended the invitation for them to stay at my home for as long as they wished, preferring that all the kids stay together rather than in a hotel. However, my son expressed concern that Ellen might feel uncomfortable leaving while everyone else stayed on. After mulling over his words, I realized that this reunion would be the first time our family could all be together since the kids moved out. I acknowledged that Ellen belonged there too. So, invite her to stay as well, I told my son. But she'll have to accept sleeping in the guest room, as I don't think it would be wise for her to stay in her old room. If you bring guests, they'll need to share your room or find accommodations elsewhere. Thanks, Dad. This means a lot to all of us, my son replied gratefully. Christmas that year fell on a Saturday, and the festivities began on Thursday night as everyone arrived. My daughter and her fiancé flew in from Australia, while my son and his girlfriend drove in from Boston, picking up my youngest who was in college there. Ellen arrived about 10 minutes before them, and I observed her sitting in her car, seemingly nervous. Witnessing them all gather in the front yard, hugging and kissing, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sentimentality for the first time since emerging from my 3 days of mourning. As the 6 of them entered through the front door, they were met with a warm and welcoming atmosphere. It occurred to me that neither my daughter nor my ex-wife had set foot in the house since I remodeled it, so there was an element of surprise in their homecoming. Yet, I had adorned the house with Christmas decorations, much in the same fashion as we had done for years. Candles, nutcrackers, and centerpieces adorned the space, albeit now on my new furniture. The Christmas tree, adorned with old ornaments collected from vacations and handmade ones from the kids' art classes, stood proudly in its customary place. I had added a fireplace during the renovations, and its warm glow added to the festive ambience. The aroma of pine, crackling fire, and mulled cider enveloped the room. Plates of cookies and fudge dotted every available surface, and the table was set with the fine china that had been passed down from Ellen's grandmother as our wedding gift many years ago. It was evident that I had transformed our house into my home, and it was more than ready to host Christmas for my family. Despite everything that had transpired, they were undeniably my family. The kids, though grown, were still my flesh and blood, and despite our divorce, Ellen had held the key to my heart for most of my adult life. There was a flurry of excitement as they explored the house. I had restored the kids' bedrooms to almost exactly how they remembered, with minor updates such as toning down the hot pink in my daughter's room to a softer pastel shade. I had replaced their old single beds with comfortable queen sets, while preserving their childhood desk and dresser sets with new headboards to match. The spacious guest room had been converted into a studio, complete with a drafting table by the window for painting and ample space for musical instruments, amps, and recording gear. I'd also expanded one side of the ground floor, transforming a small library into a large room with a TV and pool table. The living room had been meticulously arranged around the new fireplace, now adorned with brand new Christmas stockings, one for each of us, including Ellen. The sight of the stockings sparked an instant rush of nostalgia in the kids. With mischievous grins, they darted towards their stockings, and in that moment, it was as if time itself reversed, and they became carefree children again, eagerly diving into the holiday spirit. The older two, with a touch of maturity, retrieved their partner's stockings as well, each recounting cherished memories the stockings evoked. Our tradition had always been to lovingly fill the stockings with small, inexpensive gifts and treats before moving on to the main presents under the tree. Soon, the air was filled with the sound of laughter and the rustling of wrappers as they nibbled on cookies and chocolates, donned silly novelty socks, and reveled in the joy of Christmas morning. "Dad, your stocking is empty! We didn't know, so we didn't bring anything to stuff it!" they exclaimed. Taking my stocking from the mantel, I peered inside. "No, my dear, you did fill it. You're all here reminiscing, laughing, and playing. You're filling it now with the essence of Christmas. You're filling it with love." With hugs and kisses exchanged, we wished each other Merry Christmas. Ellen lingered in our embrace a bit longer than expected, but it felt natural, and for a moment it was as if we were still one big happy family. As the kids realized there were probably presents under the tree, the excitement of childhood Christmases flooded back. Gifts were exchanged, the feast was enjoyed, and after the dishes were cleared, the guitars came out for our customary Christmas jam session. As the night grew late, we began to retire to our respective sleeping quarters. Ellen moved towards the hall closet to retrieve her coat. "Thank you for being so kind to me today. I really appreciate spending Christmas Day with you and the kids. I know I have myself to blame, but of all the things I gave up, I miss the family time the most. Well, the kids are all grown and on their own now. This gathering would be just as rare even if we were still together," I responded, acknowledging the bittersweet reality of our situation. "I understand, but I also miss the quality time we used to share as just the two of us. You know, the time when it was just us as a couple. I suppose I'm finally apologizing to you. I really messed up what could have been a great life for both of us. Don't be so hard on yourself. We always encouraged our kids to pursue their dreams, to find happiness, and you did just that. We still have fulfilling lives. They're just different now." She gave me a disbelieving look. "So you're telling me you don't value what we had? After today, you don't feel any nostalgia? Regret for what we've lost?" "Ellen, we had today, and it was wonderful. What exactly do you think we've lost?" "We lost each other. I lost you. And I'll never forgive myself for it. And it seems like you couldn't care less." Tears streamed down her face. I wrapped my arm around her, and she broke down completely. I had already shed my tears when she first arrived, but I felt a pang of sadness seeing her like this on Christmas Day. Once she calmed down, I reminded her of our college days when she had ended things with me. She had been worried that things were getting too serious too quickly, and needed time to decide if she truly wanted a lifelong commitment to one person. I recounted how hurt I had been when she left, but that I couldn't bear to be with someone who wasn't fully committed to me. I explained how I had given myself a mourning period after our marriage ended and had emerged ready to embrace life again. Today, she was a beautiful part of my life, and for that, I was grateful. I remained composed, which helped calm her tears. I asked her to spend the night, set up the studio bed, and provided her with one of my t-shirts and a robe. Returning upstairs after securing the house, I heard her crying, doubting she would sleep. Nonetheless, I slept soundly. The following day felt like an extension of Christmas, and Ellen was delighted when we urged her to stay the entire weekend. We avoided discussing our past while the kids were around, but I noticed familiar expressions from our marriage in Ellen's eyes. There were the "I love you so much" and "you're wonderful" smiles. I even responded to a few silent requests for hugs and kisses. We seemed to understand each other as we did when we were married. At meals, she poured her coffee and I added just the right amount of milk. I buttered my pancakes and she applied the perfect amount of maple syrup. We completed each other's sentences. However, we slept in separate rooms. After the children departed together, leaving my daughter to visit Boston with the boys and then head to Vermont for skiing, Ellen and I were alone in our jointly owned home. I tended to the fire while she opened a bottle of wine. We sat and conversed, reminiscing, joking, and eventually delving into serious matters. I acted foolishly, wrongly, and cruelly. I understand I can never fully make amends, and I don't expect your forgiveness, but I do want to apologize. I hope we can at least be friends again. You weren't just my husband. You were my best friend, my confidant, my most trusted ally, my partner in mischief, and I miss every part of you dearly. I smiled at her, and the floodgates opened. Ellen spoke eloquently, recounting how she fell into boredom, realizing now that she had pushed me away to create the passionless void we both endured. She described the excitement of meeting a flattering younger man and the temptation of a clandestine affair. She admitted to demonizing me to justify her actions, portraying me as the villain when she was the one behaving monstrously. Her narrative oscillated between the thrill of betrayal and anger that I didn't fight for her, that I seemed indifferent and allowed her to slip away. She confessed to feeling jealous of my life when I bounced back and resumed the lifestyle I enjoyed before we met, especially when she saw another woman riding on the back of my Harley. Her jealousy turned to rage as she witnessed me with different women, each offering something she perceived as superior to what she had given me. Her emotional state plummeted after the divorce was finalized, discovering that her younger lover had a pattern of dating married women until they were single, then discarding them. It seemed he enjoyed spending their husband's money ever since his father, a traditionalist who strongly disapproved of his son's affair-breaking habits, disowned him and cut him off from his trust funds. She struggled to find another prospect after the breakup. It appeared that the eligible men her age were either already taken or unwilling to commit to a woman who had cheated on her loyal first husband. While there were plenty of men willing to buy her drinks, dance with her, or spend the night, there were no lasting options. Younger men were content to date her. After all, she maintained her attractiveness and allure when she chose to engage. However, they weren't interested in a long-term relationship with someone going through menopause. Starting a family under those circumstances posed a challenge. I listened to her vent until she ran out of steam. I poured us both another glass of wine and handed hers to her with a smile. Well, from what you've told me, I suppose you made some pretty foolish choices. But you don't owe me anything. As I mentioned before, you pursued your desires, and I loved you enough to let you go. I wished I could have captured her expression at that moment. It was clear she hadn't anticipated my response being tied to my love for her. I forgave you almost immediately. How could I hold you in a marriage when you wanted out? I couldn't keep you confined or restricted. If I had forbidden something, you would have simply hidden it from me and proceeded anyway. Though your note may have seemed harsh initially, looking back, it streamlined things for us. We avoided property disputes and didn't have to worry about custody since our children were grown. I should thank you for that. So, I'm no longer your husband, and it may take some time before you consider me a best friend or advisor. Trust is certainly an issue for me, but if you're willing to trust my advice, that label is yours to decide. Partners in crime might be a bit too romantic for where we are now, but how about we just call ourselves friends? Tears welled up in her eyes as she melted into my embrace. She decided to stay another night. But no, let's not go there. We slept separately. We simply had a lot to catch up on. It seemed we were comfortable sharing the parenting role again. The following day, she went home to prepare for a New Year's trip to join the kids in Boston. I had gigs lined up all week. It's a highly lucrative time for musicians. The added benefit was that my focus was on my music, and Ellen hardly crossed my mind. With the start of the new school term after New Year's, My schedule left little room to see Ellen. Our paths crossed next at an in-service conference in April. We ended up sitting beside each other and found ourselves sharing a table for lunch. We had a delightful conversation, centered around my daughter's upcoming marriage in Australia. It seemed we were reverting to our roles as friends. Towards the end of the lunch, she thanked me for treating her well, both that day and at Christmas. She expressed happiness that we could move forward as friends, and then asked me for a favor. She blushed, hesitated a bit, and finally stammered out a request to go for a ride on the Harley one Saturday. I responded eagerly, affirming that Sunday was forecasted to be warm and beautiful with no prior commitments. I suggested we take a ride up north, stop for a pleasant lunch, and relish some time in the fresh air. She was cheerful and animated. Memories of her on the bike with me when we were younger flooded back. Those days always ended with passionate moments inspired by hours of her holding on to me from behind as we rode, her hands exploring my chest and, well, you can imagine without further detail. She always joked about the next time we'd go for a ride with something powerful between her legs, and the motorcycle was nice too. I wasn't sure if I could resist her. And I was right. I couldn't. We rode up to the falls, and I felt her hands wander. We hiked to the top of the falls and followed the long trail through the woods back down to the bike. We stopped in a quaint little town and wandered the streets, browsing antique shops. It was the type of day I typically detested, but spending time with this woman, who I had always seen as beautiful in every way, made it enjoyable. Lunch was delightful. By dinner time, we had returned south and stopped at a charming seafood dock for dinner. With candlelight, delicious food, and the gentle lapping of waves at the dock, it was evident she was being treated to a special evening. I took her home, to my home, our home. I took her to bed, our bed, my bed. Yes, we made love this time. It seemed we were now sharing the role of lovers together. We continued seeing each other for dinner and a movie the following week, and yes, we made love again. We even had lunch together a couple of times. However, we never discussed where our relationship was heading. The idea of exclusivity didn't cross either of our minds. Our daughter's wedding was approaching rapidly. We had meticulously gone over all the details, and I had proudly covered all the expenses without complaint. The band had made good money playing at festivals. We had paid off the mortgage while still married, had minimal credit card debt, and I had a stable full-time job with a top-tier salary and no dependents to support. While I wasn't swimming in wealth, I was comfortable and had savings in the bank. The only detail we hadn't shared was our travel plans. We had each made separate arrangements, but we were both staying at the hotel where all the guests would gather. When we compared notes, we realized we were booked on the same flight. I invited her to meet me at my house and share the car I had hired to take us to the airport. On the day of the trip, Ellen arrived early. I had barely rinsed out the coffee pot and started the dishwasher with the breakfast dishes when the car pulled into the driveway. Our driver swiftly took us to JFK. After checking our bags curbside, we headed into the terminal together. Since there weren't many direct flights from JFK to Sydney that day, the check-in counter wasn't crowded, and we joined the line together. I stepped up after Ellen, and the counter attendant asked why I hadn't used the shorter line for first-class passengers. Although I had purchased a first-class ticket due to the long flight duration, I typically opted for cheaper fares and hadn't realized the benefits included express check-in. The ticket agent found it amusing and directed me to the first-class lounge. Ellen was waiting for me there, and we cleared security together before heading to the lounge. At the desk, I checked in, and the attendant didn't question Ellen's entry with a coach ticket, but offered to upgrade her to first class to sit next to me. Call me sentimental or whatever else you like, but something about flying halfway around the world with the mother of my daughter to attend her wedding in first-class seats that reclined into beds while she cramped in coach with no leg room just didn't sit right with me. When we boarded the plane by Rose, I made her wait with me. Initially annoyed and worried about losing her seat to a standby passenger, she began to work up a fuss. I explained that I had checked her in when we arrived at the lounge, diffusing her irritation. Of course, any remaining annoyance vanished completely when she was seated beside me in first class, and I presented the mother of the bride rationale. Her mood shifted to a degree that had me briefly entertaining thoughts of joining the Mile High Club. But don't be absurd, dear reader. Public displays of affection aren't my style, especially not in the confines of an airplane lavatory. We landed in Sydney, and the week was pure magic. We toured, visited, and best of all, witnessed my daughter embark on her own marriage journey. I can't express enough how proud I felt uttering my sole line, "Her mother and I do," as I gave her away after walking her down the aisle. At the reception, I escorted Ellen and savored the customary dances. Among the evening's highlights was when her brothers and I joined the band for a spirited rendition of All-American Girl, our musical tribute to our little girl. Following the festivities, Ellen, the boys, and I convened in the hotel lounge. One of them cut to the chase. "So what's going on with you two?" "Nothing new, sweetie," Ellen replied. "Your dad and I are simply embracing our roles as your parents. We've moved past our past and are relishing life. Is that all right with you?" "Yeah, Mom, it just seems like more than that. It seems like you're getting close again. Maybe even, I don't know, getting back together." "Honey, I'm not oblivious. I had a moment of insanity a while back and made a foolish mistake." "All right, I was foolish then. Incredibly foolish. I own up to that, and I accept the consequences. Your dad and I have discussed it, and what he said is true. Just like we always taught you, I made a decision. I left the relationship, and I accept the consequences." The boys turned to me for input. Having nothing further to contribute, I sat there with a smile, savoring a delightful local Australian ale. "Come on, Dad," Mom answered the question. "Do we get to hear from you?" "Boys, you should be grateful we didn't spend the week here hurling hurtful remarks at each other. I hear that's what divorced couples often do at events like this. Beyond that, I believe your inquiry generally delves into my romantic life, which is off limits. Didn't I teach you not to kiss and tell? So why would I? But Dad, you love Mom. It's obvious to all of us. And we're both old enough to understand when a girl says she wants to be just friends. So without giving me nightmares and unpleasant mental images of your love life, just tell us, are you and Mom more than just friends? Son, given our history, if we're friendly, it will always surpass mere friendship. She's the love of my life, the mother of my children, and the greatest friend I've ever had. It's one of those things humans can't simply switch on or off. Beyond that, I can't provide an answer, because that part of our life story has yet to be written. We chatted a bit longer before retiring to our respective rooms. Just as I had slipped into my pajamas, there was a knock on the door. It was Ellen. I welcomed her in, and we climbed into bed. She expressed gratitude for the first-class upgrade, and before I could catch my breath, she began thanking me for the wonderful week we'd had. She thanked me for approaching my daughter's wedding as a team, and for what I had told the boys in the lounge. Exhausted from the onslaught of gratitude, I could barely keep up. She stayed for breakfast, which I ordered from room service. The journey home felt like a dream. Upon arriving at my house before she left, Ellen gave me a deep kiss. "I want you to know that I'm here for you, whatever you want, whenever you want." Somewhere along the line, I forgot why I loved you. Somewhere in the routine of being an adult, I forgot how much I loved you. Leaving you was the biggest mistake I could have made. I threw away the most precious thing I could ever have. Hurting you will always be the biggest regret of my life, and I wish I could turn back the clock. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, just let me know. Need a tennis partner? Call me. Need a roadie? Groupie? Backup singer? I'm your girl. Need a lover? I'm your woman. Whether it's having lovemaking, abusing me, or making love to me, I'm there. Need a meal cooked? I'll do it. I'll clean, fold your laundry, do the dishes and windows. I'll never ask or expect exclusivity. I know I gave that up. But if you ever ask, the answer is yes. Friend, girlfriend, mistress, lover, wife, just ask. Thank you for being you. You're wonderful, and if you ever decide to settle down with someone else, count on me to let her know what she has, and that she better make you happy, or I'll be waiting. That's really sweet of you, Ellen. I've been so happy that we've been able to reconnect. I'm just not sure I'm comfortable putting labels on us. I don't know where we're headed. I'm just glad we're on this journey together, at least part of the time. I've spent my whole life living with women and usually doing their bidding. First my mom and sister, then right after college, marrying you. I kind of enjoy living in a home where I determine the colors and clutter levels. I like cooking my own food the way I like it, and having the fridge stocked with my favorites. I love playing in the band, and I have to admit, having an open lovemaking life has been good for me. I don't plan on changing that anytime soon. Do you remember the note I wrote in response to your letter? Yes, you said I was right, thanked me, and said goodbye. You didn't even sign it love. I meant every word in that note. You were right. We were stagnant and needed a change. The thank you and goodbye were sincere. Anything about love would have felt insincere and out of place. Anything else I could have said would have either been spiteful or made me seem like a pathetic beggar. I'm not good at that. So I wrote what needed to be said and left it at that. What needs to be written now, Tom? Not a thing. I've shown you everything you need to know. Yes, you have. You've shown me that you care. You've shown me you still find me attractive and hot even. You've shown me you want me. You stand by me where the children are concerned. You've shown you love me more than a casual lover, enough even to share dinner and breakfast. You enjoy my company enough to date me. You respect me and our history enough to upgrade me to first class, pay for our daughter's wedding completely without asking a cent from me, and to declare to our sons that I'm the love of our life. The only thing that seems to be missing is a more full-time role, being your wife. I want you to know I understand that and will never press you on that topic. I know I gave that right away, but understand that if you ever choose to ask, the answer is yes in advance, and I'll be praying every day of my life for the chance to say it. With that, she kissed me goodnight. Sure, I considered what she said. But come on, let's be realistic. I may be whipped, but why settle for just one? I had everything I could want. My own home, grown children, financial security, an ex-wife dedicated to winning me back who admitted she'd do anything anytime, a fit body with all my hair, a successful band and a Harley, and a steady stream of women vying to ride on the back of my bike and join me for after-parties. Sure, I loved Ellen enough, and there was that idea of having someone to share my golden years with. But really, maybe I'd change my mind when we hit 60, but not now. I didn't pen a Dear Jeff letter, so I didn't feel accountable for any consequences. I'd forgiven her, made amends, and my life was in order. So I dialed the number of that busty blonde who hopped on my Harley after the street festival and became my first post-divorce fling. She giggled when I asked if she was serious about never hearing from me again. Assuring me she was okay and up for a rendezvous, she invited me over. Even as I revved up the Harley to head to her place, I knew someday I'd propose to Ellen again, but that day wasn't today.
Story 4.
The fluorescent lights of Walmart buzzed overhead as Daniel Carter completed his final walkthrough of the evening shift. His worn leather shoes squeaked against the freshly mopped floor as he made his way through the aisles, checking on his team members as they restocked shelves and prepared for the night crew. "Great job with the seasonal display, Mike," Daniel called out to a young employee arranging Halloween decorations. The boy's face lit up at the praise, and Daniel felt a familiar warmth in his chest. This was why he'd stayed at Walmart for 15 years, not just for the steady paycheck, but for the sense of purpose that came from mentoring his team. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Another missed call from Sandra. She'd been increasingly distant lately, barely acknowledging him when he left for work in the morning or came home at night. Their 20th anniversary was approaching, and Daniel had been working extra shifts for months to save up for the diamond earrings she'd pointed out during their last mall trip. "Mr. Carter?" Jessica, one of the checkout supervisors, approached with a concerned look. "There's a customer asking for a manager. She's pretty upset about a return." Daniel nodded, already moving toward the front of the store. "I'll handle it. You focus on getting your team ready for shift change." The customer, a middle-aged woman with a cart full of open electronics, was red-faced and shouting at the returns desk clerk. Daniel stepped in smoothly, his voice calm and professional as he defused the situation. 15 minutes later, the woman left satisfied, and Daniel had preserved both store policy and customer goodwill. "That was impressive," a voice said behind him. Daniel turned to find Marcus Williams, the regional director, standing there with an approving smile. "Not many managers can handle difficult customers that well." "Just doing my job, sir," Daniel replied, straightening his name badge. Marcus shook his head. "You do more than that, Daniel. I've been reviewing your performance records. Your department has the highest efficiency ratings in the region, and your employee satisfaction scores are off the charts." Pride warmed Daniel's chest, but he deflected the praise. "I have a great team. A team you built and trained," Marcus countered. "Have you ever considered moving up to regional management? With your skills, Daniel?" A sharp voice cut through their conversation. Sandra stood near the entrance, designer purse clutched in her manicured hands, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and disgust. "Sandra," Daniel checked his watch, surprised to see his wife at the store. "Is everything okay?" She strode toward them, her heels clicking against the linoleum. "I've been calling you for an hour. Emma needs her credit card paid off by tomorrow for a spring break deposit, and you're here chatting about stocking shelves?" Daniel felt his face flush as Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I'm sorry. I was handling a customer situation." "Sandra, this is Marcus Williams, our regional director." "Marcus, my wife Sandra." Sandra barely glanced at Marcus, her lip curling slightly. "Charming." "Daniel, we need to go." Now. Of course, Daniel said quickly. Marcus, thank you for the feedback. I'll think about what you said. Marcus nodded, his expression thoughtful as he watched Sandra practically drag Daniel toward the exit. As they reached the parking lot, Sandra released his arm with a sound of disgust. I can't believe you made me come to this place, she hissed. Do you have any idea how humiliating it is? My coworkers saw me walking in. I'm sorry, Daniel said automatically, reaching for his wallet. How much does Emma need? $3,000. Sandra's voice dared him to object. She's going to Cancun with her friends. All the other parents already paid. Daniel's heart sank. He'd been saving that amount for Sandra's anniversary gift. I thought we agreed Emma would get a part-time job if she wanted extra spending money. Sandra's laugh was cold. A job? Like yours, you mean? Standing around in a polyester vest dealing with coupon-clipping housewives? No daughter of mine is going to work retail. There's nothing wrong with honest work, Daniel protested, but Sandra was already walking to her BMW, a car he bought her last year by taking out a second mortgage on their house. Just transfer the money, Daniel. And don't embarrass me by coming to my office again. Andrew noticed your Walmart badge last time, and I had to make up some excuse about you delivering something. Andrew Sullivan, Sandra's CEO boss. Something in Daniel's chest tightened at the mention of his name, but he pushed the feeling aside. Sandra climbed into her car without another word, leaving Daniel standing alone in the parking lot, the weight of his wedding ring suddenly heavy on his finger. Later that night, after transferring the money to Emma's card, Daniel sat in his home office reviewing their financial statements. The numbers told a stark story. Credit card debt mounting, savings depleted, retirement accounts dwindling. All to maintain the lifestyle Sandra demanded. To give Emma the things her friends had. That a text message lit up his phone. Money received. Whatever. Don't expect a thank you. Emma. Daniel stared at the message, remembering the little girl who used to run to him with skinned knees and broken toys, trusting her daddy to fix everything. When had she become this cold stranger who saw him only as a walking ATM? The sound of Sandra's car pulling into the driveway drew his attention. It was past midnight late, even for her usual work dinners. Through the office window, Daniel watched her step out of a car he didn't recognize, a black Mercedes with tinted windows. She was laughing, her head thrown back, and for a moment, Daniel saw the woman he'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. Then the driver's window rolled down, revealing Andrew Sullivan's distinctive profile. Sandra leaned in, their silhouettes merging in what could only be a kiss. Before she practically floated to the front door, Daniel sat in the darkness of his office, his world tilting on its axis, as his wife's key turned in the lock below. The next morning, Daniel went through the motions of his daily routine, the image of Sandra kissing Andrew burning behind his eyes. He waited for her to mention it, to offer some explanation, but she barely acknowledged his presence as she got ready for work. I'll be late tonight, she announced, applying another coat of lipstick in the hallway mirror. Board meeting. The lie fell easily from her lips, and Daniel wondered how many other board meetings had been spent with Andrew Sullivan. Actually, he said quietly, I thought we could talk. It's important. Sandra's hand paused, her eyes meeting his in the mirror. Something flickered across her face. Fear? Guilt? Before her expression hardened. I don't have time for this, Daniel. Some of us have real jobs to get to. The front door slammed behind her before he could respond. Daniel called in sick to work for the first time in his career, spending the morning in a daze. He found himself in Emma's room, looking at old photographs. His daughter's face smiled up at him from various stages of her life, gap-toothed elementary school pictures, awkward middle school years, recent glamour shots that made her look older than her 19 years. That a leather-bound book caught his eye, partially hidden under Emma's bed. Her diary. Daniel had never invaded his daughter's privacy before, but something compelled him to open it now. The latest entry made his blood run cold. Mom says everything's arranged. Andrew's already lined up an amazing internship for me, and he says I can have any car I want once the divorce is final. Thank God I won't have to pretend to respect Dad anymore. It's so embarrassing when my friends find out what he does for a living. Mom says Andrew's lawyers will make sure Dad can't cause any problems. I can't wait to start my real life. The words blurred as Daniel's hands began to shake. The diary entries went back months, each one more cruel than the last. Emma complained about having to play nice with him to keep getting money. She mocked his attempts to connect with her, calling him pathetic and desperate. She gloated about expensive gifts from Andrew, secret shopping trips with Sandra, plans for their new life together. Daniel was still sitting there when Emma came home from her college classes. She froze in the doorway, seeing the diary in his hands. "How dare you?" she shrieked, snatching the book away. "That's private." "Private?" Daniel's voice was eerily calm. "Like your mother's private meetings with Andrew Sullivan?" Emma's face went white, then red. "You know? I saw them last night. But according to your diary, this has been going on for months. You and your mother, plotting behind my back, taking my money while planning to leave me." "Oh my God." Emma rolled her eyes, her momentary shock replaced by contempt. "Are you seriously playing the victim? What did you expect? Look at yourself, a pathetic Walmart manager living in this boring house in this boring neighborhood. Mom deserves better." "I deserve better. I gave you everything I had," Daniel said, standing slowly. "Every penny I earned went to your designer clothes, your spring break trips, your credit cards. I worked overtime, holidays, weekends also. You could have opportunities one never had." "Opportunities?" Emma laughed harshly. "What opportunities? Community college? A job at Walmart like you? That's not opportunity, Dad. That's settling for mediocrity. Andrew's getting me into an Ivy League school. He's giving me an internship at a real company. He's successful, powerful, everything you're not." The sound of the front door opening interrupted them. Sandra's voice called up the stairs. "Emma, is everything okay? I got your text." Emma smirked at Daniel. "Perfect timing." "Mom, Dad knows." Sandra appeared in the doorway, and Daniel noticed she was wearing the same clothes as yesterday. She'd never come home last night. Her expression shifted from surprise to resignation to cold determination. "Well," she said, crossing her arms, "I suppose this saves us the trouble of breaking it to you gently." "Gently?" Daniel's laugh held no humor. "Like how gently you've been sleeping with your boss. How gently you've been turning our daughter against me." "Don't be crude, Daniel," Sandra sniffed. "Andrew and I have a connection you couldn't possibly understand. He's sophisticated, ambitious. He sees my true worth." "Your true worth?" Daniel gestured around them. "And what about our life together? 20 years of marriage, raising our daughter, building a home." "Building what?" Sandra's voice rose. "A prison of mediocrity? I'm 40 years old, Daniel. I live in a house that would fit in Andrew's guest wing. I drive a car that his cleaning lady would be embarrassed to own. Every day, I have to watch other women at the company living the life I deserve, all because I was foolish enough to marry a man with no ambition." Emma moved to stand beside her mother, their matching expressions of disdain like a physical blow to Daniel's chest. Sandra continued, her words precise and cutting. "Andrew's asked me to move in with him. He's already arranged everything: lawyers, divorce papers, new accounts. Emma will have a trust fund, a real education, everything we should have had years ago. Everything you should have had." Daniel's voice was dangerously quiet. "I gave you everything I had. Every dream, every dollar, every moment of my life was dedicated to making you both happy. That's the problem." Emma burst out. "Your dreams are so small. A management position at Walmart? A house in the suburbs? God, it's pathetic. Andrew says I have real potential. He says with the right connections, the right opportunities. Daniel cut her off. "You mean sleeping with your mother's boyfriend? Don't look so shocked. I read your diary, remember? All those secret meetings, all those expensive gifts. What exactly did Andrew expect in return?" Sandra's hand cracked across his face, the slap echoing in the sudden silence. "How dare you? Emma, go pack your things. Now." Emma practically ran to her room, leaving Daniel and Sandra alone. For a long moment, they stared at each other, 2 decades of shared life crumbling between them. "I want a divorce," Sandra said finally. "Andrew's lawyers will be in touch. Don't try to fight it, Daniel. You'll only embarrass yourself more than you already have." The sound of Emma's closet doors slamming and drawers being yanked open filled the house. Sandra turned away, her voice cold and final. "I'll send someone for the rest of our things tomorrow. Consider this your notice. Your perfect little life is over." Try not to make it harder than it needs to be. Daniel stood in the doorway of his empty house, watching the black SUV disappear around the corner. Sandra's wedding ring lay where she dropped it, a small gold circle catching the last rays of sunset. He couldn't bring himself to pick it up. Inside, the house felt cavernous. Emma's room was a disaster of empty drawers and discarded memories, photo albums thrown aside. Childhood stuffed animals kicked under the bed. A Father's Day card from her 10th birthday crumpled in the trash. In their bedroom, Sandra's closet gaped open, designer clothes gone, leaving only the modest outfit she'd worn when they first met, the weight of 2 decades pressed down on Daniel's shoulders as he moved through the house. Every room held memories now tainted by betrayal. The kitchen where he'd taught Emma to bake cookies. The living room where Sandra had once curled against him during movie nights. The backyard where they'd celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, dreams, all lies. Daniel found himself in his home office, surrounded by the modest achievements of his life. Employee of the Month certificates, community college degree, training certificates from Walmart's management program. His eyes fell on a framed photo of Sandra and Emma at last year's Christmas party. They were both laughing, but now he could see the contempt hidden behind their smiles. The whiskey bottle beckoned from his desk drawer. Daniel pulled it out, poured a glass, but couldn't bring himself to drink. The amber liquid caught the light, reminding him of Sandra's eyes when she'd first told him she loved him. Another lime. His phone buzzed a text from Emma. Movers will come tomorrow at 10. Don't be there. We don't want to see your face. The words blurred as Daniel's eyes burned. He'd given them everything, every spare dollar, every moment of his time, every beat of his heart. And they'd spent years plotting behind his back, taking his sacrifices while mocking him to his face. The phone buzzed again. Marcus Williams, the regional director. Daniel, wanted to follow up on our conversation about advancement opportunities. You have real potential. Let's discuss your future. Future. The word echoed in Daniel's mind. Sandra and Emma thought they knew his worth, had judged him based on his job title and bank account. They saw him as nothing more than a stepping stone to a better life, their better life with Andrew Sullivan. That Daniel's hand clenched around the whiskey glass. With sudden clarity, he hurled it against the wall, watching it shatter. The sound was satisfying, a physical representation of his breaking point, and oh more, that he wouldn't drink himself into oblivion like they probably expected. He wouldn't crumble and beg for them to come back. He wouldn't remain the mediocre man they'd judged him to be. Daniel sat down at his computer, his fingers hovering over the keyboard for a moment before he began to type. First, a resignation email to his supervisor at Walmart. He'd given 15 years of his life to the company, working his way up from stock boy to floor manager. But Sandra was right about one thing: he'd grown too comfortable, too content with steady progress and modest goals. Next, he pulled up local business programs and entrepreneurship courses. The community college offered night classes in business administration, but Daniel scrolled past them. He'd aim higher university programs, accelerated courses, anything that could give him the knowledge he needed to build something of his own. His savings account balance mocked him barely enough for 2 months of bills after years of funding Sandra and Emma's extravagant lifestyle. Daniel opened another tab, searching for properties he could sell, assets he could liquidate. The house would have to go. Too many memories haunted these walls anyway. He could find a small apartment, live on the bare minimum while he rebuilt his life. The sun was rising by the time Daniel finally looked up from his research. His eyes burned from staring at the screen, but his mind was clearer than it had been in years. He had a plan now, rough but forming. The jewelry store opened at 9. He'd return Sandra's anniversary earrings, adding that money to his new future fund. The real estate agent who'd sold them this house owed him a favor. She'd help him get it on the market quickly. Daniel stood and walked to the bathroom, staring at his reflection in the mirror. The face that looked back at him was tired but determined. Sandra had called him a man without ambition. Emma had labeled him a loser. Andrew Sullivan had seen him as an easily discarded obstacle, that they'd all made the same mistake, confusing kindness for weakness, mistaking his devotion to family for lack of ambition. Daniel Carter wasn't weak. He wasn't mediocre. He'd given his heart and soul to 2 people who'd thrown it away, but that didn't make him a failure. It made them fools. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Emma. Mom says make sure you leave the BMW keys. It's technically her car anyway since you only bought it because she demanded it. Daniel deleted the message without responding. Let them think they'd broken him. Let them imagine him drowning his sorrows, wallowing in self-pity. Let Andrew Sullivan believe he'd won, that he'd taken everything Daniel had, that they'd learn the truth soon enough. The morning light streamed through the windows as Daniel began clearing his office, shredding old documents and filing away anything he'd need for the divorce proceedings. Each motion felt like shedding an old skin, revealing something stronger underneath. Sandra and Emma had chosen their path, a life built on betrayal and materialism. Tied to a man who saw people as possessions to be bought and discarded, Daniel chose a different path. He would rebuild himself not for revenge, not to win them back, but to become the man he should have been all along. Success wouldn't be measured in designer labels or luxury cars, but in the empire he would build from the ashes of his old life. The movers would come at 10, just as Emma had demanded. They'd find an empty house. Daniel would be long gone by then, taking only what he truly needed. Let them have the furniture, the artwork, the carefully curated trappings of the life Sandra had deemed so inadequate. Daniel Carter had different treasures to acquire, different battles to fight. The war for his family's love was over. He'd lost that the moment Sandra had chosen wealth over loyalty. The instant Emma had traded her father's devotion for a sugar daddy's promises. But the war for his own soul? That battle was just beginning. The first rays of sunlight painted the suburban street gold as Daniel loaded a single suitcase into his old Honda Civic. The neighbors were starting to emerge, heading to their jobs, living their comfortable lives. Once he'd thought that was enough stability, routine, the quiet satisfaction of providing for his family. Now he knew better. The world was bigger than this street, this neighborhood, this small-town life. Sandra and Emma wanted to be part of Andrew Sullivan's world of wealth and power? Fine. Daniel would build his own world, one founded on integrity and true strength rather than manipulation and greed. He backed out of the driveway for the last time, leaving Sandra's wedding ring where it had fallen. Let it lie there, a small golden monument to broken promises and shattered dreams. Daniel Carter drove away from his old life without looking back, his heart heavy, but his spirit unbroken. The betrayal that should have destroyed him would instead become his foundation. From this pain, he would forge something new, not just success, but redemption, not just wealth, but wisdom, not just power, but purpose. The sun climbed higher in the sky as Daniel merged onto the highway, leaving behind the mediocre man his wife and daughter had betrayed. Ahead lay uncertainty, challenge, and change, but also opportunity, strength, and destiny. Daniel Carter wasn't running away. He was moving forward. 6 months after leaving his old life behind, Daniel Carter sat in a university classroom, his laptop open to a business plan that would change everything. The professor's words echoed in his mind. Innovation isn't about creating something new. It's about solving problems others haven't recognized yet. Mr. Carter, Professor Richardson's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Would you share your sustainable energy proposal with the class? Daniel stood, moving to the front of the room with quiet confidence. Gone were the khakis and polo shirts of his Walmart days, replaced by a crisp button-down and well-fitted slacks, not designer clothes, but professional, purposeful. The problem isn't just fossil fuel dependency, Daniel began, pulling up his presentation. It's the infrastructure. Small businesses and residential areas can't afford the current solar conversion costs. My company, Carter Innovations, will change that. A hand shot up. Your company? You're just a student. Daniel's smile held an edge. I've already secured initial funding and filed the patents. While you're all planning hypothetical businesses, I'm building a real one. After class, Professor Richardson called him aside. Daniel, I'm impressed. Most career change students take years to find their footing, but you've accomplished more in 6 months than many do in 6 years. I had good motivation, Daniel replied, gathering his materials. About that, Richardson hesitated. Marcus Williams stopped by my office. He mentioned you used to work for him at Walmart. Daniel's expression remained neutral. That's right. He also mentioned certain personal circumstances that led to your career change. Listen, Daniel, revenge isn't a sustainable business model. This isn't about revenge, Daniel said quietly. This is about proving something to myself. Whether certain people learn a lesson from that proof is incidental. The professor studied him for a moment. Well, whatever your motivation, your proposal has merit. The sustainable energy sector is booming, but the current players are all focused on large-scale projects. Your small-scale solution could fill a crucial gap. That's the plan. Daniel checked his watch. If you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with potential investors. The meeting was at Marcus Williams' private office, not at Walmart headquarters, but in a sleek downtown building that housed his personal investment firm. Daniel had been surprised to learn that his former regional director had a side business in venture capital. Daniel, Marcus greeted him warmly, gesturing to the impressive view of the city skyline. Quite different from the fluorescent lights of retail, isn't it? Life changes quickly, Daniel replied, setting up his presentation materials. That it does. Marcus's expression grew serious. I've reviewed your proposal thoroughly. The technology is solid, the market research is comprehensive, and your business plan is exceptional. But I have to ask, are you sure you're ready for this? Building a company from scratch isn't like managing a Walmart department. Daniel met his gaze steadily. 6 months ago, my wife and daughter told me I was nothing but a mediocre retail manager. They left me for a man who promised them luxury and status. I've spent every waking moment since then preparing for this moment. And if you fail, then I'll fail knowing I tried. But I won't fail, Marcus. I've discovered something about myself these past months. I'm not afraid of hard work or challenges. What I was afraid of was disrupting the comfortable life I thought I had. Now that that illusion is shattered, I have nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Marcus nodded slowly. Well, you've convinced me. And more importantly, you've convinced my investment partners. We're prepared to offer you seed funding of $5 million for a 30% stake in Carter Innovations. Daniel's heart raced, but his voice remained calm. 20% stake. I need to maintain controlling interest. 25%, and we provide office space in this building plus access to our network of industry contacts. Done. They shook hands, the deal sealed with that simple gesture. Daniel packed up his materials. Marcus spoke again. You know, I heard through the grapevine that Andrew Sullivan's company is struggling. Something about failed international contracts and regulatory issues. Daniel paused. Is that so? Just thought you might find it interesting, especially since your proposed target market overlaps with several of his company's key territories. A slight smile crossed Daniel's face. Pure coincidence, I assure you. Of course. Marcus chuckled. By the way, have you heard from them? No. Daniel's voice was flat. And I don't expect to. They made their choice, Marcus. Now I'm making mine. Later that night, in his modest apartment, Daniel reviewed the investment contract. His tiny living space was spartanly furnished, just a bed, a desk, and walls covered in whiteboards filled with plans and calculations. He'd sold everything else, pouring every penny into his education and business preparation. His phone buzzed an email notification. The subject line made his breath catch, urgent from Emma Carter. Daniel's finger hovered over the delete button, but something made him open it. Dad, things aren't what we thought with Andrew. Mom won't listen to me. I need your help, please, Emma. Daniel stared at the screen for a long moment before hitting delete. They'd thrown him away like garbage, choosing Andrew Sullivan's false promises over his genuine love. Whatever problems they were facing now were their own to solve. He turned back to his contract, his mind already racing with next steps. Tomorrow, he'd start building his team. He'd need engineers, developers, marketing experts, people who shared his vision of revolutionizing sustainable energy access. The city lights twinkled beyond his window as Daniel worked late into the night. Somewhere out there, Sandra and Emma were living their chosen life in Andrew Sullivan's mansion. Let them enjoy their luxury while it lasted. Daniel Carter was about to change the game, and this time, he was playing for keeps. 1 year later, the Carter Innovations headquarters buzzed with energy as Daniel strode through the open office space. Engineers huddled over prototype solar panels. Marketing teams debated campaign strategies, and the sales department celebrated another record-breaking quarter. Mr. Carter, Jennifer, his executive assistant, hurried to keep pace with him. The Reuters reporter is waiting in your office for the interview about the Forbes 30 Under 40 feature. Cancel it, Daniel said, checking his tablet. Something more important just came up. Get me Marcus Williams on the line. Jennifer raised an eyebrow, but nodded. In the past year, she'd learned that Daniel's instincts were rarely wrong. Within minutes, Marcus's face appeared on Daniel's office screen. Daniel, Marcus greeted him. I assume you've seen the news about Sullivan Industries? Just hit the wire. Daniel pulled up the financial report. Their stock dropped 60% after the failed Asian expansion. But that's not the interesting part. Look at their domestic holdings. Marcus leaned forward. The sustainable energy division. They're hemorrhaging clients because their technology is outdated and overpriced. Daniel's smile held no warmth. Our small-scale solar solutions are half the cost with double the efficiency. We've been stealing their market share for months, and now they're vulnerable. Marcus studied him. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time for a hostile takeover. Sullivan Industries' board is already nervous. Another quarter like this, and they'll be looking for new leadership. Daniel, Marcus hesitated. You know Andrew Sullivan still owns controlling interest. And given your history with him, this isn't personal. Daniel cut him off. It's business. Sullivan Industries has valuable patents and distribution networks. Acquiring them would accelerate our expansion plans by years. And the fact that it would destroy the man who stole your family has nothing to do with it. Daniel's laugh was cold. They weren't stolen, Marcus. They chose him. Now they can watch him fall. Across town, in Andrew Sullivan's mansion, that fall was already having devastating consequences. Sandra paced the marble floors of the master bedroom, her designer outfit hanging loose on her too-thin frame. You promised this wouldn't happen, she shouted at Andrew, who stood by the window, drink in hand. You said Carter Innovations was nothing, just a small startup that would fail in months. Andrew hurled his glass against the wall, making Sandra flinch. Shut up. That bastard somehow got his hands on classified research data. He knew exactly which markets to target, which technologies to develop. He's been systematically destroying my company. Maybe if you spent less time drinking and more time actually running your business, the slap echoed through the room. Sandra stumbled backward, hand to her reddened cheek, as Andrew advanced on her. You think you can talk to me like that? He snarled. After everything I've given you? The clothes, the cars, the lifestyle you so desperately wanted? Don't touch her. Emma appeared in the doorway, her face pale but determined. At 31, she looked older than her years, stress and fear etching lines around her eyes that Andrew's attention shifted to Emma, his expression changing in a way that made Sandra's stomach turn. Well, if it isn't my favorite stepdaughter. Come to defend Mommy, dearest? Leave her alone, Sandra whispered, but her voice held no real strength. They both knew the truth. They were trapped. Andrew's money controlled everything. The house, the cars, their credit cards. And now, with his company failing, the board meeting didn't go well? Emma asked carefully, trying to redirect his anger. Andrew laughed bitterly. Those vultures are circling. Carter Innovations has been undercutting us at every turn. Our major clients are jumping ship. And now, he grabbed another bottle from the bar. Now there are rumors of a hostile takeover. Sandra's head snapped up. Daniel? Daniel is trying to take over your company. Daniel? Andrew mimicked her tone mockingly. Still thinking about your ex-husband? The man you called mediocre? Well, your mediocre ex is now worth billions. His company is revolutionizing the industry while mine crashes and burns. Happy now? Emma caught Sandra's eye, a silent message passing between them. They'd made a terrible mistake, choosing Andrew's wealth and status over Daniel's honest love. But it was too late for regrets. They were in too deep, with too many dark secrets between them. I have a board meeting tomorrow, Andrew continued, his voice slurring slightly. Those cowards are probably plotting against me already. Emma, you'll come with me. Show them I still have family support. I have classes. Emma protested weakly that Andrew's hand shot out, gripping her arm. Wasn't I clear? You owe me, Emma. Or should I remind you of all the things I've done for you? All the things we've done together? Sandra turned away, shame burning in her chest. She'd known about Andrew's advances toward Emma, had even encouraged her daughter to comply to maintain their lifestyle. What kind of mother was she? Later that night, after Andrew had passed out in his study, Emma found Sandra in the kitchen. "Mom," she whispered, glancing nervously at the doorway. "We have to get out of here. He's getting worse. The company's failing. And he's drinking more. And go where?" Sandra interrupted. "We have nothing, Emma. No money, no jobs, no skills. We gave up everything for this life. We chose this. We could—" Emma swallowed hard. "We could try to contact Dad." Sandra's bitter laugh held no humor. "Daniel? The man we mocked and betrayed? The man who's now systematically destroying Andrew's company? Why would he help us? Because despite everything, he's a good man. Better than we ever deserved." "No." Sandra's voice was firm. "We made our bed, Emma. Now we have to lie in it. Whatever Daniel's doing with Andrew's company, we have no right to ask him for anything." Neither woman noticed the small red light blinking on Andrew's hidden security camera, recording their conversation for his later viewing. In his drunken paranoia, he'd installed them throughout the house, watching their every move, documenting their fear and desperation. The next morning, as Andrew dragged Emma to his board meeting, Sandra sat alone in the massive house that had once seemed like a dream come true. Now it felt like a prison, its luxury a mockery of the comfortable home she'd shared with Daniel. She opened her laptop, her trembling fingers typing Carter Innovations into the search bar. The results made her breath catch. Daniel's company was everywhere, news articles praising his innovative technology, business magazines highlighting his meteoric rise, charity foundations thanking him for his generous donations, and there he was in a recent photo at a tech conference. He looked different, confident, powerful, but still with that underlying kindness in his eyes that had once made her fall in love with him. The article quoted him, "Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right." Sandra closed the laptop, tears falling freely now. They called him mediocre, mocked his honest work, thrown away his love for Andrew's false promises. Now Daniel was a rising star in the business world. While they lived in fear of Andrew's violent mood swings and drunken rage's karma, it seemed, had a sense of irony. The Sullivan Industries boardroom crackled with tension. Andrew Sullivan sat at the head of the table, his usual polished appearance showing signs of strain. His tie hung slightly askew, and dark circles shadowed his eyes as he watched his board members shuffle through the latest financial reports. "This is unacceptable," Gerald Morrison, the lead director, broke the silence. "Our market share has dropped 70% in 6 months. Carter Innovations isn't just beating us, they're systematically dismantling our entire operation." "It's a temporary setback," Andrew insisted, his knuckles white around his glass of water. "Our R&D department is developing new what?" Morrison interrupted. "Everything we develop, Carter somehow anticipates and counters. It's like they're reading our playbook." Emma, seated in a corner behind Andrew, watched the board members exchange knowing looks. They'd lost faith in him, and everyone knew it. Andrew's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the water. Perhaps a smooth voice came from the doorway. "We should discuss a change in leadership." All heads turned to see Daniel Carter standing there, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. Emma's heart stopped at the sight of her father, not the modest Walmart manager she'd mocked, but a powerful CEO who commanded attention without effort. "This is a closed meeting," Andrew snarled, standing so quickly his chair toppled backward. "Security. Your security team works for the board now," Morrison said quietly, "as do most of your executive staff. Mr. Carter has made a compelling offer to acquire Sullivan Industries." "You can't do this." Andrew's face purpled with rage. "I have controlling interest." "Had," Daniel corrected, moving into the room. His eyes passed over Emma without acknowledgement. "Your recent stock sell-off to cover personal debts dropped your ownership below 50%. The board has voted to accept my tender offer." Andrew lunged forward, but 2 security guards materialized to restrain him. "You planned this," he spat at Daniel. "You orchestrated everything, the market pressure, the client losses, all of it." "I simply offered better products at better prices," Daniel replied calmly. "Your company's collapse was your own doing. Too focused on luxury and appearances, not enough on innovation and sustainability. Rather like your personal life, I imagine." Emma saw Andrew's expression change, the dangerous look she'd grown to fear. "You think you've won? You have no idea what I'm capable of. Tell him, Emma. Tell him what his precious daughter has been doing to maintain her lifestyle. All eyes turned to Emma, who shrank into her chair. Daniel's expression remained neutral, but his voice carried an edge of steel. Miss Sullivan, I suggest you leave. This discussion doesn't concern you. Miss Sullivan. Not Emma. Not daughter. The formal dismissal hurt more than any insult could have. Oh, but it does concern her. Andrew laughed darkly. Should I tell the board about our special arrangement? How Mommy Dearest looked the other way while... That's enough. Daniel's command cut through the room like a blade. Mr. Sullivan, you're firing wild accusations because you've lost control. It's over. Security will escort you out. The transition team is waiting in the lobby. You can't just throw me out of my own company. Your company? Daniel's smile held no warmth. Check the documents in front of you. Carter Innovations now owns controlling interest in Sullivan Industries. This isn't your company anymore. It's mine. As security dragged Andrew toward the door, he twisted to shout at Emma. You ungrateful little whore. After everything I did for you and your mother, I'll destroy you both. Emma fled the room in tears. Behind her, she heard Daniel addressing the board. Ladies and gentlemen, shall we discuss the future of our combined operations? Across town in Andrew's mansion, Sandra paced nervously. The staff had been acting strangely all morning, ignoring her requests and whispering among themselves. Her credit cards had been declined at breakfast, and Andrew wasn't answering his phone. The front door burst open, and Andrew stormed in, his face contorted with fury. Pack your things, he snarled at Sandra. Both of you have an hour to get out. What? Andrew, what happened? What happened? He grabbed a crystal decanter from the bar and hurled it against the wall. Your ex-husband happened. That bastard took my company. Everything I built. Gone in a single board meeting. Sandra's mind reeled. Daniel? But how? Don't play innocent. Andrew advanced on her menacingly. You probably helped him, didn't you? You and that treacherous daughter of yours. Conspiring behind my back. No. Andrew, please. We had nothing to do with. His hand shot out, grabbing her throat. Nothing? You've been nothing but bad luck since the day I took you in. Two worthless parasites living off my money, and now, Mom. Emma burst through the door, then froze at the scene before her. Andrew released Sandra, turning his predatory gaze on Emma. And here's the other one. Did you enjoy watching your father destroy me today? Was that your plan all along? He's not. He didn't even look at me, Emma whispered. He called me Miss Sullivan. Andrew's laugh was ugly. Of course he did. You're nothing to him now. Nothing to anyone. Just a spoiled little girl who sold herself for designer clothes and luxury cars. Sandra stumbled to her feet. We'll leave. Just give us time to pack. Pack what? Andrew gestured around wildly. Everything here belongs to me. The clothes, the jewelry, all of it. Get out now, before I show you exactly what happens to ungrateful whores who betray me. Mother and daughter fled the mansion with only their purses and the clothes on their backs. As they reached the gates, Andrew's voice echoed behind them. Try calling your precious Daniel for help. See if he'll take in his used goods after everything you did. They stood on the street as evening fell, watching their former life dissolve behind them. Sandra's hand found Emma's, squeezing gently. What do we do now? Emma asked, her voice small. Sandra stared at the mansion's gates closing behind them, remembering another house, a modest suburban home where she'd once been truly loved. We survive, she said quietly. It's all we can do. Inside his new office at the combined Carter-Sullivan headquarters, Daniel reviewed the acquisition documents. A small TV played financial news in the background, showing Andrew Sullivan's very public meltdown as he was escorted from the building. Quite a day, Marcus commented from the doorway. The business world is calling it the takeover of the decade. Sullivan Industries stock has already risen 15% just on the news of new leadership. Daniel nodded, signing the final paper with a flourish. Have our team start the integration process. I want Sullivan's sustainable energy patents consolidated with our R&D department by the end of the week. And Sullivan himself? The board's evidence of his financial mismanagement and personal misconduct is being forwarded to the SEC. Daniel's voice was clinical, detached. He won't be running any companies again. Marcus hesitated. I saw Emma at the meeting. She looked unwell. Miss Sullivan's personal situation is not my concern. Daniel turned to the window, gazing out at the city skyline. They made their choice, Marcus. Now they can live with it. As night fell over the city, 3 people in 3 different locations faced their new realities. In his penthouse office, Daniel Carter celebrated his greatest business triumph, knowing his success was built on integrity rather than deception. In a cheap motel room, Sandra and Emma huddled together, their designer clothes and expensive jewelry replaced by fear and regret. And in his mansion, Andrew Sullivan drank himself into a rage, watching security camera footage of his stepdaughter and ex-lover plotting escape. Unaware that his own paranoia had recorded evidence of every crime he'd committed against them, the pieces were set. The endgame was about to begin. 12 years after the betrayal rain pounded against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Daniel Carter's executive office. The city skyline, usually visible for miles, disappeared into sheets of gray. It matched his mood as he reviewed the quarterly projections for Carter Innovations' newest sustainable energy initiative. That a knock at his door pulled his attention from the documents. Jennifer, his executive assistant of 11 years, stood in the doorway with an unusual expression on her face. Mr. Carter, she said carefully, there are 2 people here to see you. They don't have an appointment. Daniel's eyes narrowed. You know my policy about unscheduled visitors. Sir, it's... Jennifer hesitated. It's your ex-wife and daughter. The room fell silent except for the drumming rain. Daniel's expression remained unchanged, but his hands tightened imperceptibly on his desk. Send them away. There. Jennifer lowered her voice. They look desperate, sir. Mrs. Sullivan has a black eye, and Miss Sullivan seems unwell. Daniel stood, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate slowness. Show them in. And Jennifer? Call security. Have them wait outside. Sandra and Emma shuffled into his office, a stark contrast to their last encounter. Gone were the designer clothes and arrogant postures. Sandra's expensive highlights had grown out, revealing gray roots. A dark bruise bloomed around her left eye. Emma, once proudly fashionable, wore worn jeans and a baggy sweater that couldn't hide how thin she'd become. Daniel, Sandra's voice cracked. Please, we need your help. He studied them without speaking, noting every detail of their fall from luxury. Sandra's hands trembled as she clutched a battered purse. Emma couldn't meet his eyes, her gaze fixed on the plush carpet that probably cost more than their current worldly possessions. Why are you here? His voice was cool, professional, the same tone he used in hostile takeover negotiations. Andrew. Sandra swallowed hard. After you took over the company, he changed. The drinking got worse. The violence was always there. Emma interrupted, finally looking up. You just ignored it, Mom. Like you ignored everything else he did. Daniel's jaw tightened. I'm a busy man. If you've come to complain about Sullivan's drinking habits, he's going to kill us. Emma's words cut through the air like a blade. He's completely lost it. The SEC investigation, the criminal charges, losing everything, he blames us. Says we conspired with you to destroy him. Did you? No. Sandra stepped forward, then froze as Daniel's hand moved toward the security button. We had nothing to do with it. But he doesn't believe us. He's been keeping videos, surveillance footage of everything. The abuse, the threats, the things he made Emma. Her voice broke. Emma pulled a USB drive from her pocket with shaking fingers. It's all here. Everything he did to us. Every crime. Every manipulation. Medical records, photographs, videos from his security cameras. Proof that he forced himself on me, threatened to cut us off if I didn't. Daniel's expression didn't change, but something dark flickered in his eyes. And you want me to do what? Exactly? Help us expose him, Sandra pleaded. Your lawyers, your connections, you could make sure he pays for what he did. He's already under investigation for financial crimes. This would bury him. The way you tried to bury me? Daniel's voice was dangerously soft. The way you mocked me, betrayed me, threw away 20 years of marriage for his money and status. Dad, please. Emma's voice cracked on the word. I know he hurt you. What we did was unforgivable. But you're not like him. You're a good man, you always were. We were too blind and stupid to see it. Blind? Stupid? Daniel laughed without humor. No, you were greedy. Selfish. You made your choices with clear eyes, knowing exactly what you were doing. He moved around his desk, towering over them. Gone was any trace of the modest Walmart manager they'd once ridiculed. This Daniel Carter radiated power and authority, his success built on the ashes of their betrayal. When you left, he continued, each word precise and cutting, you said I wasn't good enough. You called me a loser, an embarrassment. Emma, you told me I'd never be enough for you. That Andrew could give you the life you deserved. I was wrong, Emma whispered. So terribly wrong. Yes, Daniel agreed coldly. You were. And now that your chosen life has fallen apart, you come crawling back expecting what? Forgiveness? Protection? Money? Sandra stepped forward, her bruised face wet with tears. We don't expect forgiveness. We don't deserve it. But please, Daniel, if you ever loved us at all, help us stop him. Not for us, but because it's the right thing to do. Daniel picked up the USB drive, turning it over in his hands. You made your choices, he repeated, his voice hard. And now you have to live with them. Security. 2 guards appeared instantly in the doorway. Escort these women out, Daniel ordered. They're not to be allowed in the building again. Dad, wait! Emma's desperate cry stopped him as he turned away. The videos at least look at them. You don't have to help us, but Andrew needs to be stopped. He's a monster, and we have proof. Daniel slipped the USB drive into his pocket without looking at them. You supported your mother when she betrayed me, he said quietly. You helped ruin my life. Why should I care about yours now? Because you're better than we are, Emma whispered as the guards moved toward them. Because you know the difference between revenge and justice. The guards led them away, their soft sobs echoing down the hallway. Daniel stood at his window, watching until they emerged onto the rain-soaked street below. Their figures looked small and broken, huddling together against the storm, a far cry from the proud, cruel women who had walked out of his life 12 years ago. The USB drive felt heavy in his pocket. Behind him, Jennifer cleared her throat softly. Sir, your 3 o'clock is waiting. Daniel turned from the window, his face unreadable. Cancel my appointments for the rest of the day. And give me everything we have on Andrew Sullivan's current activities. Every detail, no matter how small. Of course, sir. Jennifer paused at the door. If you don't mind my asking, are you going to help them? Daniel's laugh held no warmth. Help them? No. But Sullivan's crimes can't go unpunished. Justice doesn't care about personal vendettas. As Jennifer left, Daniel plugged the USB drive into his computer. The files began to load hundreds of videos, documents, and images. His expression darkened with each click, each revelation of Andrew Sullivan's true nature. By nightfall, he had seen enough. It was time for the final act of this tragedy to begin. The private screening room fell silent as the last video ended. Daniel stood at the front, watching the assembled group process what they'd seen. District Attorney Monica Reynolds sat with her hands clenched into fists. 2 FBI agents exchanged grim looks. Marcus Williams looked physically ill. There's more, Daniel said quietly. But I think you've seen enough to understand what kind of man Andrew Sullivan really is. This is... Monica cleared her throat. Mr. Carter, this evidence is explosive. The domestic violence, the sexual coercion, the blackmail combined with the SEC violations we're already investigating. He'll go away for decades, Agent Thompson finished. But we need your ex-wife and daughter to testify. Their statements, combined with this footage, they'll testify. Daniel's voice was certain. They have nothing left to lose. Marcus stepped forward. Daniel, I have to ask, why didn't they come forward sooner? Fear. Shame. The same reasons most victims stay silent. Daniel's expression hardened. And before you ask, no, this isn't about revenge. This is about justice. Given your history with Sullivan, Monica said carefully, we'll need to handle this delicately. The defense will claim you orchestrated this as revenge for what? Daniel cut her off. For stealing my wife? They weren't stolen. They chose him. But what he did after that, the abuse, the exploitation, the crimes, that's what we're here to address. The door opened, and Jennifer entered with a tablet. Sir, it's done. Every major news outlet has the footage. Social media is exploding. Sullivan Industries stock has been suspended from trading. Daniel nodded. And Sullivan himself? Barricaded in his mansion. He's been posting increasingly erratic threats online. Local police are monitoring the situation. Good. Daniel turned to the law enforcement officials. I assume you have what you need to move forward? Monica stood, straightening her jacket. Arrest warrants are being prepared as we speak. Mr. Carter, what about your ex-wife and daughter? Do you know where they are? A women's shelter downtown. Daniel replied without emotion. They've been there since leaving my office yesterday. They could have died at his hands, Marcus said quietly. If they hadn't come to you, they made their choices. Daniel repeated his earlier words. I'm not their savior. I'm just making sure a criminal faces justice. Across town, in a sparse room at New Beginnings Women's Shelter, Sandra and Emma huddled around a small TV. The breaking news coverage was everywhere: security footage showing Andrew's abuse, financial records detailing his crimes, medical reports documenting injuries. He actually did it, Emma whispered. Dad exposed everything. Sandra touched her bruised face. Not for us. He made that clear. Does it matter why he did it? Andrews finished. Everyone knows the truth now. Before Sandra could respond, the shelter's director knocked on their door. Ladies, there are some people here who need to speak with you. FBI agents and the district attorney's office. Hours later, after giving their statements, mother and daughter sat in the shelter's small garden. The evening news played on someone's phone nearby, broadcasting Andrew Sullivan's dramatic arrest. He'd tried to flee in his private jet, only to find his pilots had already been contacted by the FBI. What do we do now? Emma asked, her voice small. Sandra watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. We tell the truth. About everything. No matter how much it hurts. Mom, Emma hesitated. What we did to Dad. We can never make that right, can we? No, Sandra's voice cracked. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. We threw away a good man's love for a monster's empty promises. That's something we'll have to live with. Back in his office, Daniel watched the same news coverage. Andrew's face, contorted with rage as he was led away in handcuffs, filled the screen. The ticker below showed Sullivan Industries stock price in freefall. Years of criminal behavior finally exposed. Sir, Jennifer appeared in the doorway. Ms. Reynolds called. They'll need you to testify about when Mrs. Sullivan and Miss Carter came to you with the evidence. Mrs. Sullivan and Miss Sullivan. Daniel corrected automatically. They lost the right to those names 12 years ago. Jennifer hesitated. The shelter director also called. They're being evicted next week. The building was owned by one of Sullivan's shell companies. It's being seized as part of the investigation. Daniel's jaw tightened. Have our foundation by the building. The shelter does good work. They shouldn't suffer for Sullivan's crimes. And Mrs. Sullivan and her daughter. That's not my concern. Daniel turned back to his work, his tone final. Later that night, alone in his penthouse apartment, Daniel poured himself a single glass of whiskey. The city lights sparkled below, a testament to how far he'd come from that suburban house where his life had imploded. His phone buzzed a text from Emma. Thank you for exposing him. We'll tell the whole truth in court, no matter what it costs us. You were always the better man. I'm sorry it took losing everything to see that. Daniel deleted the message without responding. On his TV, the news showed Andrew Sullivan's mansion being raided by FBI agents. In his study, they found more videos, more evidence of his crimes. The commentators speculated on how many years he'd serve, how many millions he'd forfeit, how far the mighty had fallen. Justice, it seemed, had a sense of poetry, but as Daniel watched his former rival's empire crumble, he felt no satisfaction, no joy, only a cold certainty that right had prevailed, not through revenge, but through the simple exposure of truth. Sandra and Emma would testify. Andrew would face punishment for his crimes. The world would know the full story of the great Andrew Sullivan's fall from grace, and Daniel Carter would continue building his legacy, not on the ashes of revenge, but on the foundation of his own integrity. The courthouse steps swarmed with reporters as Daniel made his way inside. 6 months had passed since Andrew Sullivan's arrest, and today marked the final day of testimony in his criminal trial. The media had dubbed it the case of the decade, a sordid tale of power, abuse, and corruption that had captivated the nation. Mr. Carter, reporters thrust microphones toward him. How do you feel about your ex-wife's testimony yesterday? Any comment on Andrew Sullivan's threats against you during his outburst? Daniel pushed through the crowd without responding, Marcus falling in a step beside him. You don't have to be here today, Marcus said quietly. The prosecution has more than enough evidence without. I need to see this through. Daniel cut him off. Not for them. For justice. Inside the courtroom, Andrew Sullivan sat at the defense table, his designer suits replaced by prison orange, his once commanding presence diminished by months in custody. He glared at Daniel with undisguised hatred. Sandra and Emma occupied a bench near the front, both wearing simple, dark clothing, a far cry from their days of designer labels. Emma's hands trembled as she gripped a manila envelope. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. Emma took the stand one final time, her voice stronger than it had been during her initial testimony. The defense has questioned the timing of these allegations, the prosecutor began. Can you explain why you waited so long to come forward? Emma's eyes found Daniel's for a moment before focusing on the prosecutor. Fear. Shame. Andrew controlled everything. Our money, our housing, our entire lives. He made it clear what would happen if we ever betrayed him. And what finally made you decide to act? He was spiraling after losing his company. The abuse got worse. I knew he would eventually kill us. Emma's voice cracked. We had nowhere else to turn. My father, Mr. Carter, was the only person powerful enough to help expose the truth. Even though you had betrayed him years before? Objection. Andrew's lawyer jumped up. Relevance? Goes to credibility, Your Honor, the prosecutor countered. The defense has suggested this is all an elaborate revenge plot. Overruled. The witness may answer. Emma's eyes filled with tears. We destroyed my father's life. Mocked him. Threw away his love for Andrew's money and status. We didn't deserve his help. But he did it anyway, not for us but because it was right. Andrew surged to his feet. Lying bitch. After everything I gave you. Order. The judge's gavel cracked like a gunshot. Mr. Sullivan, control yourself, or you'll be removed. The day continued with a parade of final witnesses, financial experts detailing Andrew's crimes, doctors documenting abuse patterns, FBI agents explaining the surveillance footage. Through it all, Daniel sat motionless, his face an unreadable mask. Finally, Emma approached the bench with the manila envelope. Your Honor, I have one final piece of evidence. Videos Andrew recorded himself, bragging about his crimes to his business associates. He liked to show off his power over us. The courtroom fell silent as the videos played. Andrew's voice filled the room, drunk and boasting about breaking his stepdaughter, about keeping Sandra in line through fear, about destroying anyone who crossed him. When it was over, Andrew lunged across the defense table, screaming threats. Deputies tackled him as he tried to reach Emma. I'll kill you, he howled as they dragged him away. You're nothing without me. Nothing. The judge called a recess. In the hallway, Sandra approached Daniel hesitantly. You didn't have to come today, she said softly. Yes, I did. Daniel's voice was neutral. Justice needs witnesses. Daniel. Sandra twisted her hands together. What we did to you, there's no excuse. But thank you for helping stop him, for doing what we were too weak to do ourselves. I didn't do it for you. We know. Emma joined them, her face pale but composed. You did it because it was right. Because you're the man we should have valued all along. Daniel studied them both. The ex-wife who had mocked his honest work, the daughter who had called him a loser. Their designer clothes and arrogant sneers were gone, replaced by genuine remorse. But some bridges once burned could never be rebuilt. The DA thinks Sullivan will get 30 years, he said finally. The fines and forfeitures will take everything he has left. You'll both need to testify at the sentencing hearing next month. Where do we go from here? Emma asked quietly. That's not my concern. Daniel straightened his tie. You made your choices 12 years ago. Now you'll make new ones, without Sullivan's money or influence. Without my help? Dad, don't. Daniel's voice was sharp. That word, that relationship, you threw it away. I've done what needed to be done. Andrew Sullivan will face justice. But that doesn't change the past. It doesn't erase your betrayal. He turned to leave, then paused. The shelter's new ownership will let you stay another month. After that, you're on your own. Consider it your fresh start. We don't deserve even that much kindness, Sandra whispered. No, Daniel agreed. You don't. But letting you end up homeless won't undo what you did. Just remember everything you're facing now. These are the consequences of your choices, not Andrew's crimes. He walked away without looking back, leaving them standing in the courthouse hallway. Outside, the media frenzy continued, but Daniel slipped out a side entrance where his car waited. Back to the office, his driver asked. No. Daniel watched the courthouse recede in his mirror. Take me to the Carter Innovation Foundation. We're breaking ground on the new domestic violence center today. Months later, Daniel stood at his office window, reading the morning headlines. Andrew Sullivan had been sentenced to 35 years in prison. His empire was dismantled, his assets seized, his name synonymous with corruption and abuse. That a small note at the bottom of the article mentioned that Sandra was working as a waitress at a local diner. Emma had enrolled in community college, working part-time to pay her tuition. They shared a small apartment. Rebuilding their lives from scratch, Daniel set down the paper and turned to his desk, where plans for Carter Innovation's newest sustainable energy project awaited his review. He had built something lasting, something meaningful, not to prove others wrong, but to prove himself right. The betrayal that could have destroyed him had instead forged him into something stronger. Not through bitterness or revenge, but through the simple power of rising above those who had tried to break him. Daniel Carter had won, not by destroying his enemies, but by refusing to let them destroy him.